be as what it appeared, because people used the sample areas of their jurisdiction and generalized about the whole episode of turnout. But when you unpack it and you get scientific about it regarding these returns, you find that the picture may be a little different. But on all, we need to appreciate the voter turnout in terms, given the circumstances under which the poll were conducted. You know, you have COVID. There are many people genuinely who may have opted out of the voting process because of COVID, given the numbers. And the evidence to that, even in many voting areas, the SOPs were not strictly followed, especially the social distancing is something that was very difficult to enforce given the numbers. So some genuinely out of the sampling they could have seen on TV, it could have affected their decision to go for the poll.
Professor Mariamreva, picking your mind here on COVID-19 itself, you'll notice that because of COVID-19 and the restrictions, the guidelines that were given to all the candidates, this time round, we saw President Museveni and not doing the rallies like he used to do. The previous election where you were, President Museveni managed to do about 530 plus rallies from when he began to when he stopped his campaigns. And I was doing about, on an average, 4 to 5 campaign rallies every other single day. Now, it wasn't the case. Robert Kyagulanyi, as opposed to all the other candidates, enjoyed this moment by forcing his way to actually do the rallies, which was not the case with all the other candidates. They tried to limit themselves to the guideline in there. Let's think there was no COVID-19. What do you think would have been the outcome of the election? What do you think would have played? And what do you think it would actually have been before this day today?
The outcome would not have been that much different. You see, it's one thing to go to a constituency and do a rally. It's another thing for you to get votes from that constituency. I'll give you 2 simple examples. Bobi Wine went to northern Uganda and campaigned and had big rallies. People welcomed him. People even gave him presents, right? Look at the results coming from there. You know, he's not like leading. Museveni has taken over like the whole of northern Uganda in terms of votes. Go to western Uganda, and I even wrote a piece like 10 days ago saying that as much as Bobi Wine is going to sweep central region, but Museveni will not get less than 30% central region. When it comes to western Uganda, Museveni is going to get a block vote. That's why you see in Rukunjiri it is 0. Kasese is turned almost 0 completely. Other parts of western are just 0, and that's a big region. Bobi Wine went to my home district, Ibanda district. He was welcomed.
In Ibanda?
Yeah, yes, he had a big rally in Ibanda. But after he left, when I tried to find out, because that's where I come from various people, it was very clear that he was not going to get many votes from Ibanda, and it has happened. So even now, as we wait for the final declaration, if you realize Bobi Wine jumped from around 30 to almost 35%, almost. That means that the urban areas like Wakiso, Kampala, you know, Mukono, most of the rest had come in, had been, you know. That's why now when they announced again, he has not gone up. So expecting the final declaration, the rest coming in are from rural areas. Museveni is going to move to around 60%. And for me, even if we allow these campaigns, you need to see the candidates in the race. Right from the very beginning, it was very clear that Honorable Amriat would not garner votes.
You knew that, you saw that from
yes, I did, and I wrote it about it several times.
You actually predicted that President Museveni and Kyagulanyi will say at the 90%.
Yes.
Then the rest, the spoiled, the invalid, and all the other generals will share the 10%.
But even if they take the 10%, that's why Kyagulanyi is moving up. He's eaten into that.
He's eating into them.
Into the 10% we were supposed to get. You know, so even before, like a week before, no, about 5 days before this, I realized that before voting, I realized actually in western Uganda, Mukisa Muntu was nowhere. And that's when I started crying for my friend Karuhanga, Honorable Karuhanga.
Gerard Karuhanga.
Yes, he should not have gone on the ANT ticket. If he had remained as an independent, he would have come back. But you know, when you present a party in western Uganda, and it's not NRM, it's not the bus, your chances of losing are high. Now you see Rukunjiri, people are winning in Rukunjiri because of Kizza Besigye. He would be there the candidate, would appeal to the sentiments of the people, like the Bob Wine appeal to the sentiments here in Central, and then they would vote with the Vestige. Like the people who are with him in that race, they also get votes. And so, I knew this Amriat will not get votes in Western Uganda, even if he campaigned for 2 years. Now,
in Western Uganda,
he would
even
not.
if he campaigned for 2 years, non-stop.
Yes, and he would not get votes in Central region here, even if he campaigned for 1 year. Amriat.
He wouldn't get a vote.
Yes. Now, when it came to General Tumukunde, I thought he would have pulled out crowds in Western. He used to go there and campaign for Museveni and so on. But I actually was not going to get any votes. So I wrote him off. Now, what was left was Honorable Kyagulanyi. Now, Kyagulanyi, there are 2 places where I could not defeat President Museveni. Western, even if you gave him another 6-month campaign, but Museveni will still get a block vote. Northern, he would not defeat President Museveni. Overall, Northern region, President Museveni will still get up over 60%, but one will get the balance. Now in Uganda,
but even in the Eastern.
Yeah, Eastern.
The Eastern proper.
No, in Eastern.
See the candidate Museveni.
In Eastern region.
Defeated Amuriat
in his own polling station.
Yes.
Even Muntu.
But you see, Amriat did not have votes in his own constituency. Remember, he was defeated last time in his constituency.
As a member of parliament.
Yes, and even when he went there to campaign, he didn't have crowds in his own.
So he was rejected by his own home.
In his own whatever. So to me, and also them, they believe he could not be president. You know, people come to you when they feel you are presidential material. When FDC came up with Amuriat, everybody was saying, my goodness, how could he? And people felt that Amuriat had been put with this other lady, the leader of opposition, to ensure that the leadership in parliament and that party level is weak, that is easier for Kanukizavich to come back as a candidate.
It was intentional?
Yes.
By the party itself?
Definitely. But you know what happened? Kanukizavich didn't know what was coming. Bobi Wine started emerging. Kanukizavich kept coming in Uganda and so on. Actually, Bobi Wine had taken over Central region. And he calculated, he knew that he was going to lose the vote in Central region. Now, he looked at Western and other places, he said, no, since I got 35%, I should not come back now. But if he had come back as Kanukizavich, we would still be talking about 15% for him. He would still get votes in Western, some votes in Eastern, some in Central.
Wouldn't that have pulled down President Museveni's majority now?
Definitely. He would be having around 15%. Bobi Wine would be around 20 there because of getting a reasonable number of votes from here. So it would be around 37. Or close to 40.
President Museveni would be
would still be above the 55 mark. So when you look at that, even if now you gave Bobi Wine another 1 month to campaign in Northern Uganda, the situation will not change. In Eastern, people now have seen the outcome. And I knew that Bobi Wine will get votes there, Museveni will get votes there. But now having seen this, if we give them another 1 month to campaign, people will say, we know that Northern is going to vote for Museveni, Western will vote for Museveni, Museveni is having votes in Central, we should not be far away from the dining table. So they will still vote for him and the things will not change.
Dr. Kizza Bestie's 35% last time, it translated into 3.5 million votes.
Yes.
When you look at what is in here, for Bobi Wine now at 34, he's got 3.26, and he still has a deficit of about 300,000 votes. Do you think from the remaining 8.8% of what has not come in, Bobi can actually hit the 3.5 million mark? Of the total number of votes that Dr. Kizza Bestie got in 2016?
It depends on where those polling stations are from. If the majority are from Western and the Northern and Eastern,
he's done.
He's done. But if the majority are from Central and urban areas in other parts of the country, he could easily raise it up to around 50.
Now, let me pick Honorable Sebalu's mind on this particular one, but I'll request that you all give me an answer to this. Should we now start writing Dr. Kizza Bestie off into political oblivion from what we're seeing today? Now that we've seen another opposition leader emerge, should we now think that Kizza Bestie's star was there, it's on for some time, and it's now dying out? Should we think so? That can he rebrand himself into something better, or this has been his time, we've seen him, and the rest is reading about him in history?
No, I don't think I would write him off. Because you need to see the name recognition of Besigye, even outside his home area. That tells a lot in terms of people's perception with regard to leadership credentials. Between you and me, I still believe that Dr. Kizza Besigye has better leadership credentials than Kyagulanyi in terms of leadership. The experience, the exposure, and the orientation and the outlook. That's why he was able to garner votes from northern region and eastern region. That's why he was able to get votes outside his home area, because then people were looking at the leadership credentials. In northern Uganda, he was seen as an alternative. Actually, when people are making such comparisons, they want to see whether you are an alternative. And in terms of that, he was seen as an alternative leader in terms of outlook and in terms of appreciation. So that profile of his still remains. But all he may need is to rebrand himself, repackage himself, and create better
do our supporters look at these credentials? Because when you talk about leadership credentials, you'll notice very well that men like Bidandi Sali had these leadership credentials. And you wouldn't imagine that if you gave Bidandi Sali a portfolio or leadership,
far. Even Amama Mbabazi had it.
Amama Mbabazi is one of those with leadership credentials.
But you see, on top of leadership qualities, you must have the appeal. In terms of appeal, Besigye packaged himself in an appealing manner. The way he would deliver his messages was appealing. That is an area that tells the difference, because the credentials also go with the packaging. You may have the skills, but if you are not good at communicating your message in an attractive or appealing manner, that is something that also has a bearing in terms of your connecting with the audiences. Yeah.
Professor Baria, do you think we write Dr. Kizza Besigye off into political oblivion?
No, if you want to come back, he can come back. But where things are, he cannot contest and become head of state. He is somebody who, if you look at him and the Honorable Kyagulanyi, Kizza Besigye is more presidential, okay? But times have changed. We have a youth barrage. We have so many youth all over. And I see if like now he came into a contest with Bobby Wine, and there is also President Museveni, we give the three of them, where we are right now. Kizza Besigye cannot defeat Bobby Wine in that contest. In Central.
But if you look at the national outlook, he may garner more votes outside Central than Kyagulanyi.
But you see, the other element is that when Bobby Wine Kyagulanyi goes to Eastern Uganda, he also still gets votes. Northern Uganda, when he total it up, you know, you remember Besigye has been in this race more than 3 times.
4 times, actually.
Yes, he's been coming to 25%, 34%. At one time, he almost reached 40%. Now, let's look at Central Region. Central Region, FDC is being uprooted. As we finish this week,
actually not being,
it's been uprooted, actually.
No, the last phase is coming in the local government or local council election.
No, but with those
what is going to happen?
And they're not there.
But with those, I will share with you the statistics. I will share with you the statistics of
what I'm talking about. The last phase is the local council. You know,
exactly.
You cannot hang up here at Parliament. They are now going for LC3 positions,
LC5. FDC is not in local government.
In local governments,
they are not there.
In local governments, I'll give you the statistics here. For example, for district and chairpersons across the country, ANT across the country could only bring, for district chairpersons now, only 21. DP only 14, Ecological Party 1, FDC 55 for district chairpersons and city chairpersons. Independent 321, JEMA only 1, NRM 145 for I think all the districts, and then UP actually pulled or brought 47, UPC 18. Now that's for district chairpersons.
But those numbers, it depends on where, which locality.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying actually. That NUP has 47 district chairpersons. If they all went through, then they only have 47 districts across the country. Now the localities also depend. Do you think these 47 can actually be from northern Uganda, western Uganda, the Rwenzoris and all these things?
If you remember when NUPU was announcing candidates, they actually announced across the country. I thought they would have parliamentary candidates everywhere. You remember that list when they were announcing? They would come and say, Eastern, so many people. Northern, so many. Western, those candidates never finally materialized. But what I know is that NUP has a focus. So Kampala City, Masaka City.
They wouldn't mind about Hillsborough.
And some of these other towns within Central Region, they are going to put up a big fight. They are going to say just vote the umbrella. The big fight is going to be there. Now, there are other areas, because they want to appear as a nationalistic party, where they have these candidates. They are going to find a way of campaigning for them. If they are lucky, some candidate can easily go through. But now
there's also something we need to look at this point in time. Like this recent victory was kind of a wave with serious hope of attaining the highest office, because they explored and looked at the possibility of getting the presidency. And that created a momentum that marshaled that wave and gave it good momentum. But with that out of the way, I'm looking at a situation where even the vote turnout at the local government may slide.
I want to agree with both of you.
I want another wave. The other wave is that as much as you are towards the announcing of the final results, and which are President is going to be declared president-elect, Honorable Chagulanyi Kam are going to come up and say, we are rigged out. That's going to give them momentum, and you will see them coming out.
Psychologists have what they call emotional reasoning, and why you do not give yourself room for what you do not want. I think when we return, we will address that and see what that means to the result. But right now, let's go to Chambogo for this security briefing, where the security personnel are also now giving us a state of security in the country. Then we'll return with the discussion.
In files walking to where the scene of chaos is, to show Ugandans that if anybody causes chaos in minutes, these motorized infantry would have reached to save the situation. And I'm very sure Ugandans liked that, and it was the cause for all the confidence for them to work smartly and go to vote. There was another question on divided security, which he talked about, which the AIGP also talked about. No, divided country, Ugandans versus security. Absolutely not true. I want also to add my voice. Let's not do judgment on a few characters to the entire nation. If a few people who like chaos do something, let's not equate it to the entire country. Unless we have done research and found out that 80% of Ugandans actually were against or are against security. So there is no division. We are actually together for the people, and we must take to note that majority Ugandans want peace, and they have been peaceful. So there is nothing like division. Security is for all of us Ugandans, and we shall continue to provide it. It is one of the basic needs for any country, and Uganda is not exception. I think those are the questions that I would have wanted to talk about.
We're going to Uganda now, and we'll wind
Exactly.
up.
My question is, yes, the allegations and some even backed evidence of security personnel getting involved in drama that surrounds elections at polling stations, running away with ballots.
Can you be specific to a certain point?
At least the example in Buildup, everyone is talking about it, where a candidate was trying to use security personnel, and in other areas, some things have happened. What does it mean with the pride that we have been carrying around of professionalism and discipline amongst security?
For God's sake, the chairman electoral commission announced, if I may have to be very specific, over 30,000 polling stations, over 34,000 polling stations. And an incident has just happened in Mukono. That's the one you can cite, in Mukono. And even in Mukono, I must be categorically clear that there was a honorable minister who had escorts, military escorts and police escorts. It's not still direct, but even these escorts, as I told you, those escorts, if found to be directly involved, instructions have already come from above. I told I don't want even to avoid it, from the Chief of Defense Forces, that if any escort of any minister or any member of parliament or any VVIP is involved in a malpractice, they must be held accountable. I don't think there is anybody here who doubts the UPDF resolve and capability to try or to punish its members individually. We have done it. We have sentenced our soldiers to several years, 100 plus, not 3 or 2. So it is a question of comparison the activities, the actions, or some of the incidents that are happening. If out of 34, one isolated incident happens, I bet my head, bring 5 out of the 34,000, then I will say that UPDF is gone. 5, they are not there.
Thank you so much. What happens under the Constitution? Just the result that is being announced here. Are they going to be given police protection? And then my second question is, you say people need to get security officers to go and maybe interact with the Honorable Robert Chagulanyi.
Thank you so much for the question. You repeat for me the second question, but for sake of the first question, I don't think we are here to talk about assumptions, assuming people want to do this. I think those are speculations which we are not going to be drawn into, and I stop it at that. The second?
Yeah, my second question is about where some people wanted to access his home and security had to move in. Are you trying to say that if you want to see the honorable presidential candidate, as they are still,
No.
you need security clearance?
No. If you want to see him and he knows you are coming, he will know you are coming and he will be ready for you. But if somebody scales the wall and jumps inside, I think that is an unwanted visitor.
Thank you so much. Let's have the
Bannayuganda, ekisooka twagala kubeebaza nga ebitongole ebyeddembe wano mu Uganda olwa okwagala eggwanga lyammwe, kubanga okulonda y'emu ku mpagi ez'amaanyi eza demokurasiya mu nsi yonna. So twagala kubeebaza olw'okuba nti mwazze bangi ne mugenda ku polling stations zammwe ne mulonda president oba MP gwe mwagala. Twagala kubeebaza. Ekyokubiri, ebigendererwa bya security kwe kulaba nti nno tukuuma Bannayuganda n'ebintu byabwe basobole okugenda okulonda omuntu yenna gwe baagala. Omulamu ogwo twagukoze bulungi, tukyagukola era tujja genda mu maaso nga tukukola okutuusa elections zino zonna bwe ziggwa ne LC1 chairman. Tuli beeyamu kulaba nti mugenda mu maaso nga mukola emirimu gyammwe nga tewali kutaataganyizibwa kwonna. Era nze tusuubira nti okulonda kuno kuyinza kugenda mu byafaayo nga okulonda okubaddemu generally emirembe mu ggwanga. Era weewaawo tukwatiraawo tutambule bulungi, buli omu awe munne ekitiibwa, buli omu amanye nti waliwo winning, waliwo awangula ne awangulwa. So tutambuliraawo tuleme okukola ebyo ebiyinza okuleeta obutabanguko mu ggwanga lyaffe. Ffe nga security tujja ngenda mu maaso, era buli omu bw'aba amanyi nti waliwo ekintu oba oliawo kiyinza okutataganyiriza eddembe ly'abantu mu ggwanga, ffe weetuli atubuulire era tutambule mu maaso. Abasirikale be mulaba wonna we baliwo ku lwammwe, tebaliwo against you, baliwo ku lwammwe. Tuli visible era buli omu asobola okutulaba. Bw'oba olaba abasirikale baffe engeri gye bakolamu emirimu gyabwe, batambula bulungi mu nnyiriri zaabwe, batambula bulungi era tebatataganya muntu yenna. Abasinga tebalina namundu, bakutte batons era bakola emirimu gyabwe. Twagala mumanye nti okulonda tekomye olwaleero era kukyagenda mu maaso. Njagala kusembyayo kino, omulimu gwaffe gwa okulaba nti tukuuma eddembe ebiseera ebyayiseewo nga tetunaba kugenda mu kulonda, mu biseera bino ebyokulonda tekunaba kuggwa, n'ebiseera nga tuvudde mu kulonda. Operations zaffe awo kwe zitambulira. Twagala kubeebaza olw'omwoyo ogwo, mwebale nnyo, mwebalire ddala, temujjangu okwo. It's not good.
ayogera tumubuuza ebibuuzo afande kasindi
Okay. I finish once and for all. Yes. Yeah. That's a bright idea. Ekisooka security omulimu gwaffe gumanyiddwa bulungi. Omulimu gwaffe gwakulaba nti nno tukuuma eddembe Abannayuganda nga basalawo ani gwe baagala kulonda. Sifa aba basalirawo. So omulimu gwaffe tukoze nga bwe gwina okubeera. Nga bw'abadde agamba Lieutenant Colonel Kick, abadde agamba nti wabaddewo incidences ntono ezibaddewo era zoogedde naye generally okutwaliza awamu security ekoze omulimu gwayo. So sikiriziganya n'abo abagamba nti security beyingizza mu mulimu gwaki gwa electoral commission. Si kituufu era tetukikoze era tetukikolangako. Ekyogamba nti Bannayuganda beekutudde ku security installation. In fact nfunye amasimu mangi abantu nga bankubira nga batwebaza olw'omulimu gwe tukoze kubanga babadde basuubira ebintu bingi ate nga si birungi. Babadde basuubira nti oba oliawo dduka abantu bagenda abamu bavana mu kibuga ne batambula ne bagenda mu byalo newankubadde nti balondera wano mu kibuga. Naye essuubi lye tubawa nti eddembe lino lye mulabye yerigenda tujja kugenda mu maaso nga tukwatirawo abantu baddeyo mu kinawadda mu mirimu gyabwe bakole kubanga tulina okukola tulina okulya. Fe omulimu gwaffe wakulaba nti abantu bakola naye nga waliwo eddembe. Tewali sisuubira singa weebali oba oliawo kiri mu mind yaabwe naye saagala kulowooza era nsuubira nti si kituufu nti abantu kati tebaagala security. Waliwo olukonko wakati wa security n'abantu nedda si kituufu. President yali very open ku nsonga lwaki ezaavaako okusooka okuyimirizaamu internet. So bw'oddamu n'ombuuza ekibuuzo nsonga za byakwerinda oba kiba kitegeeza nti oba oliawo tewamuwulira. Naye ensonga ezo yaziwa era abantu bazimanyi. Kyemanyi nti omwogezi wa government Ndugu Ofono Opondo ajja kuvaayo ne position ya government ekwata ku internet eno buli omu ajagala. Nange kenyini nkola ki njagala nzireyo ku Twitter wange nga bwe mmanyi naye sijja kusobola okutuusa government bwekola ki nange nindiridde omwogezi wa government asobole okutubuulira internet di lwenekomawo. Waliwo ekintu ekyenjawulo ebitongole naddala ekitongole kya poliisi engeri gye tugenda kubanga tukwasaganyamu emirimu gyaffe going forward. Okukozesa tear gas n'eryangi bwe lityo, it is not going to be the first option, first instance. Nti singa wabaawo obutakkaanya wakati w'abantu ab'enjawulo oba ebibinja eby'enjawulo oba akanyolagano wakati wa poliisi n'omuntu wa bulijjo nti tusooke tukozese tear gas, ekyo kigenda kubeera ekisembayo. twagala okuva mu covid-19 operations olaba we twatandikira n'engeri gye tutambuzamu si we twatandikira. Tugenda kukozesa community policing, tugenda kukozesa okwogera n'abantu. Twagula emizindaalo, ndowooza mwalaba mu covid-19 operations, community liaison officers baffe, political commissars baffe, public relations officers baffe nga bakozesa emizindaalo. Emizindaalo egyo weegiri, tugenda kuteeka essira ku abaserikale baffe okusooka kwogera n'abantu. Nze experience gye nfunye nti abantu bategeera bulungi era bw'oyogera nabo n'obategeeza lwaki ogenda cooperatinga mu ngeri eno naye nga si ngeri endala bategeera. Waliwo abo abajja oba oliawo abataagala kutegeera naye bategeera bulungi. So we tugenda kutandikira tekitegeeza nti tiyagasi tetugenda mukozesa naye tiyagasi tujja mukozesa nga emitendera egyo gye njogeddeko nga giganye okukola abantu nga baganye okutegeera awo we tujja kukozesa tiyagasi. Tutegeere nti waliwo ebintu bibiri. Ekisinga ku bino ye covid-19 senyiga ono omukambwe senyiga waali era akyayagala kutambulira mu makubo ago ge tumanyi gatambuliramu n'okusingira ddala abantu bwe baba beekuŋŋaanye mu kitundu nga bangi chances z'okufuna senyiga omukambwe oyo ziba nyingi. Twagala kutegeeza abantu nti bajjaganye naye nga bajjukire nti waliwo senyiga, baleme okubeera bangi mu kitundu, basigale nga beewa amabanga, basigale nga banaaba, basigale nga banaaba mu ngalo, basigale nga bambala obukookolo. Nze akange emyezi n'emyezi ndowooza gwe gusoose okujjako nga ndi mu nyumba yange. So twagala kutegeeza abantu nti they can go out and celebrate naye mujjukire nti waliwo covid. Ekyokubiri, mulemu okujaganya nga mukikola olw'okwagala okusoomooza bannammwe, kubanga okusoomooza kuyinza okuvaamu obusambatuko, kayinza okuvaamu okulwana, biyinza okuvaamu n'effujjo n'ebintu ebirala. So musigale muri responsible. Era twabagambye bannayuganda, era twagala kikuti ekintu kino twagala tujja kuddamu tukyogereko okutuusa bwe tutegeera nti tekikyaliwo, nti bw'obanga owiininza akalulu oba candidate wo wa president oba candidate wo wa MP, kiri kya buntu kya buwangwa okusanyuka. Nejjukira nti waliwo omulala oba oliawo tekimusanyusiza kubanga naye abadde naki abadde ne candidate gwayagala. So mu celebrating with responsibility, ate bw'oba oluzinze lose again with dignity. So tekyetagisa nti ogende ogambe munno nti watugamba nti singa kino kivaawo ogenda kukola kino kati tutuno we tuzze tukoleko nga bw'ogambye. Lwaki tugenda gundi ku leve eyo? Nze nsuubira nti twefuge nga bwe mwagala security ebeere nga nnungi, nammwe musigale nga muli baddembe. Awo Uganda tujja kubanga tugamba nti level yaffe eya demokrasiya egenze waggulu era teka wansi. Okay.
Nebwotema
ndoza naye temunneetaaga inakumaawo.
Bannayuganda nga sinnagenda ku ebyo bamawulire be bangamba okugendako kibeera kinkakatako okubayozaayoza ku lw'obululu bwe tuyiseemu okuviira ddala bwe tutandika nga tukolera wamu ne bannaffe kuva mu bitongole ebirala ebyokwerinda okulaba nti tulina emirembe egyannamaddala era okutuuka kaakati nga tetulinayo bintu ebiri awo ebitaataaganyiza kulonda kuno, era mbasuubiza nti bwe tutyo bwe tugenda okubeera mpaka bwe tunaafuna pulezidenti omujja. Ku bya security tugenda kubeerawo, tugenda kuweerezaamu abapoliisi n'abasecurity abalala security omulongooseemu, si security owa bulijjo naye ng'ono mulongooseemu kwegamba ayongezeddwako ku level okulaba nti kino kye tuyitamu tukimaliriza bulungi. Njagala okubuulira bannayuganda nti okwawukanako ne bye baali basuubira kubanga bye byabaawo mu November abantu ne barayotinga ne tufiirwa abantu baffe, obululu buno butambudde bulungi. Ffe nga UPDF tulinawo incidents oba ebintu nga 3 byokka ebyabaawo. Ekimu nga kiri Rakai bwe bagamba nti motoka yaffe H4DF 147 n'emmotoka endala ya civilian yayitawo mu polling stations endala nga bawayiriza abantu okutiikinga abacandidates be baagala. Njagala kubuulira bannayuganda nti tukyanoonyereza kubanga motoka zaffe za H4DF ezirina figure 2-3 zitera okubeerako ne 0. N'olwekyo aba transport section fleet yaffe bakyanoonyereza kino ekinamba kyandiba bakiyiya buyiya kwagala kutwambaza amatu g'embuzi kutuliisango. Naye nga tukyanoonyereza tujja kulaba oba kino kituufu kubanga teri avuddeyo n'atuwa obukakafu obumala nti kino kyabaddewo, era twawaddeyo akamanda waffe Bosco Wore nawe abeereeyo okulaba nti atuukira ddala ku ntobo y'ekintu kino. Akokubiri akaabaayo kempita akantu weewano Magere ewa mwami Bobi Wine bwe yagamba nti ffe abana security twabuuka fensi ye ne tugenda munda ate ne tutwala omukuumi w'ekyo. Si kituufu era naye akimanyi, naye bya politics munnaye bwe bityo. Naye nga ekirungi omwe yajja n'abuuka ekikomera ng'ayagala kugwa munda, twamukwata era ali ku poliisi y'e Kasangati, ababiri ne badduka yadde tukyabanoonyereza ffenna nga joint security. Ekyokusatu y'ensonga ebaddewo olw'eggulo emityana emuli abakuumi ba minisita omu Honorable Kibuule. Njagala okutegeeza eggwanga nti ebintu bino mukono kibaddewo mukono. Njagala kubuulira bannayuganda nti aba security ate naffe nga UPDF tetutudde, era omusirikale yenna anaakwatibwa nti abadde yeenyigidde mu kavuyo konna yadde oba oli escort wa minisita, kubanga ne bw'obeera escort osigaza olina bakomanda abo, tujja bakwasa omukono ogw'amaanyi okulaba nti bwe baba bamenya amateeka batwalibwa mu kooti zaffe bavunaanibwe. Ekya minisita sijja kyogerako, oyo pulezidenti yamulonda, naye njagala suubiza nti ku ddaala erya waggulu ddala balina ensonga zino engeri gye bazigonjoolamu. N'olwekyo bw'olaba obuntu buno obusatu obubaddewo bwe tulaba nti UPDF erinnya lyaffe lyogeddwa ku polling stations 334 ne tubaawo ne incidences 3 zokka, ndowooza awo naffe tuweekubako ne tugamba bannaaye tukoze bulungi, era njagala bannayuganda bongere okutusapootinga okulaba nti twongere okukuuma ensi yaffe eri mu mirembe, era mwebale nnyo tugumizaawo. UPDF tetukola fekka, naye lwakuba nti kati twongeddemu amaanyi kubanga embeera eyeeriwo. Tugenda kubeera mu streets zammwe, tugenda kubeera mu maka gammwe, tugenda kubeera buli wamu ku lw'omutima omulungi okutuuka bwe tunaalaba nti ekiseera kituuse kati buli embeera yonna ekakkanye tusobola okukendeezaako, kubanga era tubeeramu security ebeeramu buli kaseera, naye lwakuba kati tubadde twongeddeko okulaba nti okulonda kugenze bulungi. N'olwekyo teri asuubira nti tugenda nkya, nedda, si kuwosa nkya, tujja kubeerawo. Maybe bwe tunaamala okulayiza ne tufuna pulezidenti omupya tuyinza okulowooza ne tulaba engeri security bwekakkanyeemu, tuddemu tuyitemu engeri gye tunaaba tutadde abasirikale waffe buli wamu okuweereza okusapootinga poliisi.
DPC arrested them already.
nga bwe nkugambye ekintu kino tukikoze ffenna nga bwe tukola wamu nga kitole mu budde bwa kalulu era DPC w'emukono ne RDC w'emukono bayinza okuwa ansa ennungi abakuumi abamu bakwatiddwa be baalabye direct kubanga gye bagenze basanzeeyo security endala bye bakoze bibadde si bituufu ne babakwata saagala basalira musango kubanga awo mbanyingidde ate omulimu gw'amateeka kambalekera era ntebuuza nange ngende
emisango gyo nga bakama baffe boogedde emisango egyabaddewo mu nnaku ezebbiri mu polling stations emitwalo 3,484 twasobola okufuna emisango egyetoololera mu byokulonda egiwerera ddala 42 egyaviirako abantu 84 okukwatibwa mu kiseera ekyo naye ng'okutwaliza awamu ebitundu byonna okwetoolola eggwanga byetaba mu kulonda ne process ey'okubala n'okulanga obululu kwatambula bulungi. So era wano we tuli buli ddoboozi lya buli munnayuganda lyawuliddwa bulungi. Tetwafunyeyo incident yonna nti waliwo omulonzi yabadde mu layini n'afikkirirwa okukuba akalulu oba okukuba akakonge. So ku mulundi guno twagala okutegeeza bannayuganda nti buli eyalondeddwa agattira wamu obululu bw'abo abamulonze obuwanguzi bw'abo abamulonze n'abataamulonze. Kati kiba kitegeeza nti kandidate oyo oba ku ddaala erya pulezidenti we binaalangibwa oba ku ddaala erya memba wa paaliyamenti entamu yonna aba akoze eki aba agisitudde. Kati aba alina okutuweereza kyenkanyi awatali kusosola nti gundi ono teyampa kalulu okuneneŋŋana okwaliwo ebyo byonna biba birina okukoma kubanga akalulu kasigala kalulu naye ate obuntu bulamu bulina okusigala nga buntu bulamu. So n'olw'ensonga eyo twagala okwebaza abo bonna bonna abatuuse ku buwanguzi ate n'abo bennyini oba abasingiddwa nabo tubeebaza okwetaba. Wakyaliwo omulundi omulala ate bwe basobola okuvaayo ne beetaba mu bintu bino. Wabaddewo eggomba ku rediyo Gomba abagenze ku rediyo ne batandika okutambuza amawulire ag'obukyayi mu bantu ekyaviiriddeko omuwagizi omu gwe baali bavuganya naye abawagizi okumulumba ne balyoka bookya emmotoka ye. Poliisi yaffe y'eggomba ne banna security abalala already bali mu kukola okunoonyereza mu ekyo naye nga tekyabadde kifaanani kirungi. Ebyerakaayi babyogeddeko sigenda kubiddamu. Mpozzi ekinoni tulina abantu bana abakwatibwa olw'okuba waliwo okulwanagana wakati w'abawagizi ba Abdul Kiyimba ne Bena Makuza bonna abaali bavuganya ku kya Bukoto South. Mu bitundu ebirala ebyekira nayo waaliyo ebikolwa eby'effujjo mpozzi ebuwenge. Tulina akabondo akaagenda ne kalumba ekifo awaali walondesebwa polling station ya front yard ekisangibwa e Butagaya ejjinja. Bano baagenda baali bawagizi ba Munirwa Frederick yali yesimbyewo ku Kyakagoma County. Baagenda ne bawamba obukonge. Abantu babiri baasobodde okukwatibwa. Mpozi n'ejjinja nayo twafunyeyo mu kitundu eky'Emasese eyali agezaako okubba akabokisi oyo naye n'akwatibwa. Okutwaliza mu keesi zino zonna awazze wakolebwa effujjo tuzze tukwata abantu naye nga emisango gyabadde 42 gyokka gyokka egyaviiriddeko abantu 84 okukwatibwa. So naye nga tugenda mu maaso n'okulaba nti kino ekiseera ekisigadde abantu abawagizi b'abamemba ba paliamenti abasinga badde batandise okujaguza, naye tujaguze enjaguza ey'emirembe, tuleme ate okgenda okuleetawo ebikolwa ebyokusoomooza, ebyokujereka, ebyokutiisatiisa. Bannange ebyo tubireke, obululu kati buvuddewo, tudde ku buntu bulamu. Mwebale nnyo, mwebalire ddala.
Njagala kwongerezako eddoboozi ku baganda bange ab'ebitongole bikuumaddembe, kusiima Bannayuganda nti buli omu yasobodde kuba nti yeesalirawo kwani ajja tukulembera ekisanja ekijja. Ffe ng'ab'ekitongole eky'amakomera twayiseemu bulungi, yadde abasibe tebasobodde kuba nti balonda, naye babadde basigadde nga tebalese kavuyo, okuggyako nti ebiseera ebyemabega mu bululu obwaggwa oluusi bwe babawo okulangirira nga bamu abasibe baagala kutoloka. Era njagala kukubira omulanga abasirikale bannanga ab'ekitongole eky'amakomera nti obukuumi twongeremu, kubanga tulina obuvunaanyizibwa kuba nti tubeera n'abantu abo abaatuweebwa tusanga kooti weenaaba ebaagalidde ne tubatwalayo. Mpozi n'ekirala njagala kusaba Bannayuganda nti politics kalinga kapiira, mubaamu tiimu ewangula ne mubaamu tiimu ewangulwa, naye tekitegeeza nti egye wawangudde ebeera tiimu nafu, no, giba mikisa. So njagala kusaba tuddeyo, sente nyingi zasaasanyiziddwa naddala bantu kinoomu ne gavumenti, tulina okuddayo tukole eggwanga lyaffe ligende mu maaso. Era nsaba nti tuleme kwerabira nti akawuka kano akasenyiga tukyakayina, naddala abo abaagala okujaganya nga bamaze okufuna obuwanguzi, tujaganye mu mirembe, tujjukire. Era nakino nkyogera nti kafyu tenaba kuvaawo, temulowooza nti kafyu yavuddeko, ekyaliwo. Era okutuusa bwe banaabanga bagambye nti ebeera tuzzeeyo, kafyu evuddeko, tuddeyo tukole emirimu gyaffe.
What do they want to know from
you? Social media. Internet.
I don't know what questions you want from me, what answers you want from me.
Asking when the internet will be coming.
I think you should first answer the question, why was it shut down? The president did say it, but just to recap, internet is a platform, is a tool that should be used for good cause. Unfortunately, in world circumstances, not just here, internet and social media, there are people who are using them as a weapon. It has been weaponized in information dissemination. And therefore, in this particular election, our assessment, among the top 3 threats to this election was abuse and misuse of social media, digital media, especially carried by the internet. And so there was hostility, there was a threat, which compelled the government to shut down, first of all to scale down, but eventually to shut down, because people were increasingly using it to disseminate false news, hate speech, conjuring false results or trends. And so the government shut down because it was understood to be among the top threats to this election, in addition to COVID, terrorism, common criminality, and election violence of various types. Thankfully, from what the assessment that has been done now, election violence hasn't been as widespread and as threatening as initially thought because of the posture of the security. So that's the reason internet has been shut down. When our assessment tells us that that threat has gone or has been reduced, and we are able to contain emerging peripheral threats to disinformation, especially now that we have concluded the election, the polling, we are by and large concluding release, announcement, and declaration of results. For example, for members of parliament, as you may know, maybe 95% have been declared. So far, there are no indications that internet or social media can undermine the election results at parliamentary level. People who have won have absorbed their win. The ones who are not successful are also absorbing their losses. Now, we are waiting for the presidential. We want to believe that the measures taken since Wednesday, people who are raising anxiety are also absorbing their disappointment with the trends of the official release of the presidential results. Once the results are announced and declared today, we want to give people to absorb tomorrow. So we are looking to Monday. We are looking to Monday to partially open the internet. The first half of Monday will inform whether we go full throttle and open. So we are looking at about 9, 10 o'clock Monday morning.
As a platform of communication, freedom of expression being cut off and shut down, would it have anything to do with the legalities and illegalities that we mentioned after the results?
Well, we go back to our constitution. We go back to the laws that directly govern elections. There is no law in Uganda which says results shall be credible only when they are spread through social media. Our laws are clear how results are disseminated, how results are declared, how winners are declared. Social media, to our understanding, is not among them. And it has been borne, we have been proven right, that even with 3 days, 4 days of suspension, shutdown of social media, there is no candidate who can claim that they have, first of all, there is no voter who can claim that they did not vote because of the shutdown of social media. There's no one who can claim that their results were not counted properly because of the shutdown. There's no one who can claim that they have not received the accurate results because of the shutdown of the social media. And so we got the constitution, we got the laws of Uganda. There are many things that are said to be natural rights, but they are limited by law, they are limited by procedure, they are limited by ability. The overwhelming majority of Ugandans listen to the radios, watch TV, mouth to mouth. The mouth-to-mouth communication has adequately addressed the concerns of the electorate and the candidates. There is no candidate who does not have their results declaration forms, which is the primary document from which any other communication platform was going to depend on to look at the results.
In addition to that, Mr. Okono, you are looking at elections only, and you are looking at social media, but the internet was cut off completely, and it affected the impact is beyond the social media. Some people could not access their money from the banks. Some businesses have been affected. What about that?
We regret the inconvenience, but you know, any reasonable mind should have adequately prepared yourselves, the media. You remember for a week, you were alerting people about the possibility of shutdown. So we regret the inconvenience, but the inconvenience was done for the bigger good, that nobody will be capable of spreading hate, spreading disinformation, especially false disinformation, with the overall objective of discrediting the results and perhaps making Uganda ungovernable. We regret the inconvenience, but it was done for the general good. Now, as to whether the shutdown dents in a significant way the credibility of the outcome of this election is simply a matter of conjecture. Let those who allege so, the burden is theirs to prove that actually the shutdown of the social media has impacted 50%, 80% on the outcome of this election and credibility. I don't think we have to debate that endlessly, but whoever makes that allegation, the burden is on them. We can go and check what is the turnout in this election. What is the rate of release of results in relation to the constitutional time frame? Take the example of the presidential election. Our law says results must be declared within 48 hours. If we exceed 4 p.m. this afternoon without declaring results, and we give the shutting down of social media, of internet, as the reason, then you can take us on that. But as far as the Electoral Commission has said, we are going to be within time. By 3 o'clock, results are going to be declared, and the winners will be known, the unsuccessful people will be known.
For such a serious thing as a national internet shutdown, you're being very vague about these threats. Please tell us specifically, what threat is there?
Maybe you haven't understood me. First of all, I want to say, Uganda owes apology to nobody. The government of Uganda owes apology to nobody, especially foreign. Why we have taken the measures? Because of our threat assessment. I've said here that the specific threats was abuse, misuse, disinformation, fake news, with the overall objective of undermining the integrity of the electoral process, including the results. And the third, possibly to cause destabilization, because once you fund false, fake, deliberately, there is the potential of causing destabilization. And so, yes, we know all of us have been inconvenienced, including me. But the main axis of this election, which is the Electoral Commission and the results, the polling and the results, haven't been affected in a serious way, because you can only make that a case if the Electoral Commission fails to deliver the elections and the results within the constitutional time frame. But I've said by 4 o'clock this afternoon, the Electoral Commission is going to make that declaration. Good enough, the Electoral Commission has given updates no one in Uganda, no one in the world can say they are not aware of how the electoral process in Uganda is standing today.
Why do you always say you don't owe anyone an apology? And you always mention the national community.
Yeah, because there are people who think that Uganda should answer primarily to foreign constituencies. Let me just repeat. We owe our first responsibility to Ugandan citizens. The second, we owe our responsibility to the voters, in this particular case, to the voters and the candidates and candidates agents. Foreigners, they may be friends, they may be allies, but they are secondary. It would be good if we satisfy their curiosity, but they are not our primary concern. Our primary concern are the citizens of Uganda. What they see, what they do they believe that we are transparent? And even if there are gray areas, it is our responsibility to tell them that all is meant for the general good. That's simply what I'm saying. It is the same thing with observers. First and foremost, the primary observers of this election are the voters, the election officials. If those two conduct their responsibility with integrity, with transparency, we don't need foreigners to observe our elections to make them credible. But it is good, because we live in a global world, if foreigners come in and observe. But we want to disabuse this false narrative that if foreigners are not observing the election, or they say they are not observing, therefore the elections can't be credible. In any case, would they be able, those foreigners, would they be able to go to all the 34,000 polling stations? Absolutely not. They will rely primarily on what the election officials of Uganda do, what the candidates do, what the Ugandans do, what the agents do, and what the voters do. That's the primary one. And so we just want to appeal for them to make that appreciation. Them supporting the process is okay. Giving it a stamp of approval is additional, but the main stamp of approval we need are from Ugandans, and particularly voters and candidates. Yes.
Question regarding back to internet. It's not just about businesses. Also, people have paid the taxes. The OTT tax has been paid. People bought bundles. The government decided to shut down. The government also asked the internet providers to reimburse the Ugandan citizens of their money that way.
We have not thought about that, but now that you have raised, we shall consider raising it with the service providers or even the government to ask the service providers to extend the duration of the shutdown, that people have not used their OTT, people have not used their bundles. That is a legitimate concern which the government will take on with the service providers. HR, internet, government okugalawo internet ne social media okutwaliza awamu, kino kyakolebwa lwa bulungi bwa nsi bw'eggwanga, kubanga ffenna tumanyi nti wadde internet oba ebyuma bikalimagezi babikola okutuyamba okulongoosa okugondeza emirimu ngeri gye tuweerezamu bannayuganda n'abantu bannaffe.
Let me start by saying that peace be with you, peace be with you, peace be with you. First of all, I want to thank God. I want to thank all of you people who participated in the elections of Thursday. I want to thank all those. The media who covered it. I want to thank all those, the Electoral Commission who organized it. I want to thank those who are praying and asking for peace everywhere. I want to thank in a special way the security services who provided security everywhere in the country. And I want to thank whoever participated and whoever has been praying for this day to pass in peace, and it has. I really want to take this opportunity to say that thank you for keeping the peace up to now, and to remind you that as you celebrate, and I am appealing to all of you, that as you celebrate your victory, as you mourn your loss, as you are doing whatever you are doing, remember COVID is still around. Maintain the SOPs. I know there is a temptation of celebrating and gathering and crowding. Please avoid anything that takes us back into violating the COVID rules and guidelines, and ensuring security wherever you are. Please maintain that security, and I want to appeal to the public, look out for anybody who wants to create violence, to report the nearest security agency as soon as possible, so that we maintain this peace. And I'm appealing to the security services to remain vigilant wherever, as you did during the elections. This is a wonderful time that we have now chosen our leaders. Let us enjoy a peaceful environment, and we move on. God bless you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much. In just 1 hour and about 40 minutes, the Electoral Commission will be finally telling us who they shall. The Uganda People's Congress wanted it to happen differently. Paulo Mwanga went and registered the legal notice number 1 of the time, and actually he took over the roles of the chairperson of the Electoral Commission, and all decisions and the announcements were done by him. We come forward to Stephen Akabwai, who was here in 1996, then to Azizi Kasuja, and to Badri Chigundu for 3 years of the first 3 elections of the multi-party dispensation, and now to let's try to do a comparison of all these chairpersons of the Electoral Commission. Even when Mujenyi Byabakama was put on the spot to say human, lots of things actually, and I don't know whether he's actually proving himself. I don't know whether he's passing the test. I don't know whether so far so good or not the best. Professor Varia.
You know, when you're making a comparison, you need to compare oranges with oranges, apples with apples. Now,
these are chairpersons of electoral
yes, they are
commission.
chairpersons. Like, for example, this election, since January last year, COVID was on ground. And by March, we were shutting down various institutions, March this year. By the time the campaigns were launched or candidates were nominated, we were in the middle of COVID, which is still on. So a lot of things would like to blame Justice Byabakama for. Again, he has this cover of what? Of COVID. It regards the process, like issues to do with the campaigns, issues to do with, you know, how candidates were handled and so on. The issue is, if we didn't have COVID, would the candidates have been arrested on the campaign trail? Would they have been manhandled by the police and so on? So there are all these issues where I would say that that is outside my edits, under security and so on. So, but by and large, I mean, if you look at I'll look at all of them so far. If I was to say, for me, Akabwai stood out among all of them.
He stood out?
Yes.
In
He did his best. In the times, yes. He stood out, yeah, as much as there were issues. But if you look at like the one of the 1980, I mean, the military commission had a lot of powers. What could he have done? You know? So, again, when you look at the Chigundu era, who was still, you know,
where you participated.
Yes, I participated, of course. The country was still in this transition, you know.
Uganda
has been growing democratically, you know. This political dispensation did not come just like in 1 day or 2 days. I mean, I was about to say that maybe we also need to send election observers to the US. You saw what happened recently, after 30-something years. So, for me, when I look at the chairpersons, they have done their best within the prevailing circumstances. And the Byabakama, we should not judge him on one election. But the way I see things, I would now, as we come to the end, I would like to say he has done his best, because you cannot only use one election, the presidency, to say, hey, you've not done so well. Parliamentary, I see many people conceding defeat, many people are happy. At the presidency level, in the last 3-4 days, he's doing well. And out of what I have observed, even if anybody was said, let us give these candidates another 1 month, the results will not change. So to me, Ugandans should welcome the outcome of this election, accept it, prepare for the next 5 years. And those who still have an opportunity of participating in the local council elections, and they want to say, we actually did it, we are going to do it again, let them go for the local council elections. If, for example, a given party won in Rakai, go back to Rakai at LOC5, LOC3, yeah? And show us that actually you won. Take those positions also. If you claim that you won in Kampala, in the city, take those positions.
Okay.
They are there, they are key positions. Okay. If you won in Masaka, do the same.
Ndugu Honorable Sebaru.
Yeah, I think when you make such comparison, there are certain variables that you need to look at. These are leaders of electoral management body that executed or had their tour of duty during 2 different regimes in terms of application. So it would be easy to compare those that served under the NRM.
There's only one who bows out, only Chikira. The rest are NRM.
The other colleague was in a totally different environment. But in all, you need to use 2 variables. One, the electoral rolls. How are they followed? You remember, you've just indicated that Mwanga simply took up a notice and he did away with the electoral roll. So that complicated the work of the chairman. Actually, the chairman ceased to be, and Mwanga
by legal notice, yes.
So we can't now use that to compare him with this. So that eliminates him. He was well-intentioned. He had the credentials and capability.
And
someone abused the law.
And the system didn't favor him.
The system abused the law and gave him an uncharitable exit. Now let's use the ones that have served under this government. You have Akabwai, you have
Aziz Kasuja, Badru, and now Byabakama.
Badru and you have Byabakama. Those you look at the operative environment on the ground during their tenure. Akabwai served during the CA and the subsequent. And that is the time we were under the movement system. And we are talking about individual merit. Now that creates a kind of different ball game. You are having individuals competing against themselves. You didn't have parties competing against parties, in which case you have a party in government, you have a party in opposition. So it was more of individual merit. And again, a big part of it, you had a representative kind of democracy. But the CA is where we had universal suffrage coming into play. And that was presided over by Akabwai, but still it was individual merit. That presented less challenges than institutionalized competition, where you now have parties competing against another, you have government, party in government competing against other several parties. But all in all, I think these leaders have been able to apply the law, the electoral laws, be it presidential, parliamentary, and local government. And the law has inbuilt mechanisms of resolving disagreements, and we've seen that applied, where even some people elected have been removed because of the law, and by-elections being held. We've seen by-elections being a common feature of electoral process, which means that the laws have been applying and the laws have been taken advantage of for people who felt unfairness in terms of their view of the process and how it was applied. Then another thing, you look at government. We've really not seen direct government interference in the affairs of the Electoral Commission, like was the case in 1980, where the law had to be changed and the chairman made redundant and someone taking over. We've not seen that happen. which means that government has tried to give leverage and give an enabling environment for all the actors within the election management body to do their work. So that is another aspect that we need to look at. We also need to look at the aspect of funding. Largely with the serious challenges of funding across sectors being a common feature, government has tried to avail funding. At times it comes in late, and you find it creates challenges to the managers of the electoral processes to do their work in good time. Issues of procurement, you just see these biometrics came the other day. Maybe people didn't have enough time to try them out and do a bit of quality control in good time. But largely government has provided funding to electoral commission to the extent that an election like this one, basically government has funded it almost 100%, because again we've been having challenges of our partners funding electoral processes and almost wanting to call the shots in one way or another, even in determining the time of disbursement, and therefore creating challenges in management. But government has also tried that. And when you look at the electoral processes, it begins with the laws which prescribe how the process is going to be undertaken, and it is concluded with the measures of conflict resolution, which is the court. And you've seen very often that that has been taken full advantage of. We've had those disagreeing with the outcome, even at the presidential level, going to the Supreme Court, and it has pronounced itself on the electoral process. So that provides the operating situation on the ground regarding the electoral processes. And I want to say that all the people presiding over these processes have tried their level best in the circumstances. They've been faced with the different challenges because the level of democratization has gone deeper. The level of participation has been increasing every other time. And the challenges on the ground keep changing. But so you need to judge them according to the operative situation on the ground. So largely they've tried their level best. You know, being an umpire of a race where there are so many interests. There are interests of institutions, there are interests of individuals, there are interests of regions. It's not a cup of tea. So they've tried at their level
but
best.
one thing maybe I could add, you know,
on the comparisons,
the element of enablers, as he has told you, in terms of like financing, they have not been all financed the same levels. But also if you look at enabling laws, it's like most of the actual almost since after we went into multi-party politics, we've been having these electoral petitions.
In 2006.
And the courts have always been coming up with the like
recommendations.
Yes. And most of the time, some of these have not been handled in parliament. So like if they said, as the chairman could have performed better if this law was amended, but it's not done, now do you blame that person? So there's this thing of enablers. And also maybe what we have to realize, at times we tend to blame the EC on things that are beyond their control. The EC, like for example, said, you people can take pictures outside the what? The polling station. And then in their mind, they were saying, okay, we are going to take a picture and maybe transmit results, things like that. Now, when the internet is switched off, you're not going to blame the EC.
You don't blame it on the EC, that I took a picture which I couldn't transmit.
So, but for me, by and large, as he has said, the EC has done its part in the circumstances. And you have to look at the whole process, because at times you tend to look at the presidents alone. The whole process, even LOC1, LOC2, they've done their best.
And finally, I think there is also a culture which has come up in our society, a culture of not conceding defeat. There are people who go into a contestation, and from day one, they are building a narrative that if they don't win, then the organization of the process has been faulty. So they don't own up on their own weaknesses in terms of their state of preparedness. Like for instance, up to now, there are candidates who have never shared their manifestos. So if you've not shared your manifesto and your ideas, how do you expect to connect with the people and win? But all those will want to use the Electoral Commission to explain their loss. And that culture is taking root.
I have about 4 manifestos here of the different candidates. Yoweri Kaguta Museveni's manifesto, Patrick Kamene Toboy's manifesto. I have Kyagulanyi Ssentaba's manifesto. I also have Muntu manifesto. I didn't get one of Mao, and these are the 5 political parties that we saw in there. Now, for the individual, the independent candidates, I didn't chance to get one. Just the other day, a day before elections, is when Katumba Oye actually launched his manifesto. I don't know whether Ugandans got into that. But if there's anything to look into the manifesto and to even vote for that, is also a discussion that we'll get into. Let me pick your mind on, I just talked about emotional reasoning. That does not give room to loss. Now, you'll notice that many of Robert Kyagulanyi's supporters had this hashtag trending with them. We are removing a dictator. Come 14th January, we are removing a dictator. We've suffered for so long, but the suffering is ending on the 14th. After the 14th, we are getting into New Uganda. Now, this other side, you have Patrick Kamene Toboy, who was also promoting something called the NRM junta must stop. Now, you have a dictator one side, and you have a junta the other side, and I'm only wanting to know whether this message actually sank in the minds of Ugandans. But you'll notice that for Kyagulanyi's supporters, they never left room for themselves that their candidate would actually lose the election. They were 3-1-1 sure.
You said they were enthusiastic.
That enthusiasm, of course. And let's talk about that. That psychological effect.
You see, if you have a team and you are going into a football match, you have to play your team for a win. If you have any doubts, or if you give them any doubt that actually you're not going to win, then you will not win, you know. So they had to charge their supporters to say we are going to win. But the ringleaders, the key people, of course you come into contestation knowing that actually this one I may not win. But of course you have to mobilize your people. The main issue now is, now that you know that you are not going to win, because the results have been counted, the final results are going to be announced, how do you deal with your constituency? Because you see a person like Bobby Wine is just 35, 36?
38.
38. So he has a bright future ahead of him. So the way you handle the situation after the results have been announced and you are not a winner. Just remember, by the way, he's been in parliament for 3 years or less. 3 years. So he has not been in politics for a long time, a long period. So for him, the key issue now is whether he can stand out as a leader and manage his people. If you raise people's expectations, you must find a way of managing the expectations. When the truth finally comes out, or the reality just strikes and say, I'm not winning this time. Because you see, when he came out and said, we are winning, for him, he thought, that's why even he came out with the music, say, I've not reached various constituencies, but my music will reach the people. He knew to put out the music out there, people will listen to the music and vote for him. And he was hopeful that all youth across the country would actually vote for him.
On the night of, just the day before voting, the following morning, just before internet was actually switched off, he clocked 1 million followers on Twitter.
Yes.
And one of his last tweets before the lockdown were like, 1 million followers just before elections. This is clear victory to all of us. So there was also that. And the following on Twitter is all not on Byabakama's register.
No, but even
but it energizes.
He has NRM followers who are following him. He has people outside Uganda. You may actually, if you analyze the Twitter following, you'll find like 20% is from Kenya. Another 5% is from Zambia. And so on. Those are not voters.
They don't translate into votes.
Those are not voters. And so what I'm saying, he had hoped that the youth across the country
all for
actually come out and vote for him. Now, I want to tell you, the youth within the municipalities, what you call centers and towns,
urban centers,
and so on, they are many of them are unemployed, many of them are frustrated. These people have been in the universities and so on who don't have jobs, they are frustrated, so they can actually vote for hope. He was giving him that kind of hope. But if you go to the youth in the villages, these LC1 villages, they vote with their elders there. You know, what the people in the LC1 system are telling them is what they go with. You know, so I've been telling people, if you come into this election, you want to win. Out of the 30,000 plus villages we have in this country, you need to go to at least 70% of those, or 75 of those, and have structures in those villages. You know, when you go to the villages now looking for votes, you know what they tell you? You need a minimum of 5 people in the village to go around. Even if you come and campaign, they want you to keep every week visiting them, talking to them. And some of them will be asking you for water. So, without that, you cannot say you're going to have this sweep across the country.
The psychological issue of not leaving room for loss, thinking it must be a win for you and nothing else. What do you think Bobi Wine needs to do to actually manage his supporters whose expectations were raised so high?
Yeah, I think there is something we need to look at from the viewpoint of opposition. This was brought on board by Kanuchiza Besigye. The whole politics of populism, the politics of drumming anxiety, the whole politics of raising expectations beyond reasonable reach. And then thereafter you get a challenge of meeting the expectations that you put in the roof. So when you lose, you definitely have a lot of work to do in terms of getting people to appreciate what befell them, in terms of the gap between the expectations and the reality on the ground. And that is the Besigye kind of politics. That's where defiance came to take lead. That's why people like Mugisha Muntu, when they came with the politics of constructive engagement and structure building, it didn't find favorable ground within the support base of FDC, because they always wanted this engagement that creates activity, that creates action and a reaction. Now that politics is not sustainable, and this is the politics the NUP picked on in terms of raising the expectations. But the outcome of the same brought 2 levels of reaction. There was a reaction from the pro, those that believed in his politics. They really went in and put their energies in favor of change, and they mobilized, and they knew change was coming. And the change has come in that some people are going to be MPs. So for them, change has come, because there are those who joined him for purposes of offices, purposes of positions. Some even had to abandon their own parties, having looked at the possibility of getting the office using that of that party.
But that's why people go to politics.
So you find people who decamped at the last minute from DP for purposes of retaining their parliamentary office. To them, change has come because they are going to be MPs, they are going to earn. So change has come, but not the one anticipated for the whole population. Now that created an interesting dimension in that now Honorable Chagulanyi needs to manage the success he's been able to attain. Surely you can't dismiss him. He's been able to get many members of occupy the opposition space. Yes, he's occupied it, but in limited scope, because in terms of returns, he's been able to get good returns at the parliamentary level from the central region, but he's thin on the ground outside the rest. In the rest of Uganda, he's a little thin on the ground. But the success he's been able to make in the central region is something good to write home about. But if you are obsessed with assuming the first seat at the expense of the kind of success you've been able to register, if you don't take off time to appreciate that, he may not even be in position to take advantage of the success he's been able to assume here. So like the idea of denouncing the outcome, are you denouncing the presidential outcome, or you are equally denouncing the parliamentary outcome, which has seen you register some success? So when you are denouncing the electoral process, at what level do you stop? Is it only at parliamentary and not presidential? Is it presidential? If it is presidential, what about those areas where you won in presidential and parliamentary? Which one are you denouncing? Are you telling your members not to go to parliament because the process was defective and at what stage, at what position, and at what electoral area. So because of the obsession of the winning of the presidential, you may find someone undermining even the success level he's been able to get at the parliamentary level, which then calls for leadership to use that and coalesce.
And that's why I want to pick Professor Badia's mind. Will Honorable Kyagulanyi have locus to discredit the process? On the 3rd of November, when he nominated at Chambogo, he actually, when he had been given the certificate to as candidate now, duly nominated, in his opening remarks, when he was giving that first speech that he did at Chambogo, he first of all put Byabakama on notice that President Museveni prides in rigging elections. And we are putting you on notice, Ugandans are watching you, everybody's watching you, and we are actually telling you not to do that. Now, that's why he started. But later on, he allowed to go through the processes as Byabakama had actually pushed him through. Now, you remember very well that as he kept on having these confrontations with the police and stuff like that, he kept writing to the Electoral Commission seeking the Electoral Commission's indulgence in many of his activities. And you could see him come and engage with the same Byabakama and stuff like that. Now that he's occupied the opposition space, like Honorable Sebalu here says, 57 members of parliament, I think, and 3 NUP-leaning members of parliament now just occupy that entire space of the opposition, pulling down the number of DP candidates. So I think now only 8. Only 8, you know, that's what it is. Of course, dwindling UPC, now the FDC, and everything in there for the opposition. If he came out to discredit the process with 57 members of parliament, would you justify him, or it would be naivety in a way?
You know, before I actually get to that, let me just add one point. Actually, Justice Byabakama has helped Honorable Kyagulanyi with managing expectations of his supporters. Since 14th, when he started announcing the results, his supporters are really getting it that Israel cannot win. The supporters of President Museveni felt maybe he may not win the first round, but they also now get in the level of saying we are likely to win. So everybody's expectations have been balanced. So now, when the results come out, when they announce at 3, I don't expect a lot of riots. And if they are there, they are going to be isolated, and the police and security
is on alert.
Clear them by tomorrow. Latest Monday morning, everybody will go back to their business, normal business. And I know that Honorable Kyagulanyi is not going to leave his home in Magere. He's going to stay there, and he's not going to allow him to incite any violence.
And there's something they were clinging on to doubt the outcome of the process was the declaration of the source. But Justice Byabakama has put out a list showing all the district tallying figures to be able to support what he's announcing. Because that was being used. Where are you getting this? Why aren't we hearing the districts? But they've been lined up and
that has been put out
made a reference.
Yeah, because one of the journalists at the Tally Center asked Byabakama to read also the urban centers. Now, there's also the thinking that you're not reading the urban centers, which are presumed to be Kyagulanyi's strongholds. You're still concluding something before I come in here.
Yeah, so I did that, and now I'm going back to the one of discrediting the results. You know, if you are going to look at these results and say they are not free and fair, you have to look at the whole picture. You know, in various constituencies across the country, Honorable Kyagulanyi never fielded candidates, and most people they have considered defeat. Where he fielded candidates, and they have come up as strong candidates, they have been declared winners. It's just in a few places. And where somebody is losing in one of these places, the margin is big, you know. So at parliamentary level, people can go to court to contest, but many of them are satisfied. Now, at presidential level, Kyagulanyi is now close to 35%. And when you finally look at the districts or the regions where the rest are coming from, even within him, he's going to have that feeling that actually these are the results, close to what it's supposed to be, because in many of those places, they didn't have support. You can go, like I mentioned earlier, to even and do a public rally. But after you have left, there is no support.
You live
so you don't expect results to come from that saying you have won with 60%. That one cannot happen. The other thing is that if I was him, I would move slowly with discrediting the results. Using my own sources, you know, I'm a researcher, and I was contested as a presidential candidate. I still have my contacts across the whole country. You realize that opposition, all of them combined, have not provided polling agents in more than 40% of the polling stations.
And just talking about that, the law is very clear that any candidate is allowed to appoint agents wherever.
Yes.
But if you do not appoint anybody, then you have no local standard.
All you need is only the EC.
What the EC declares is actually what you have to take as
even if no agent has signed on the form of the EC, as long as the returning officer has signed and put the details of what happened at that polling station, it's valid.
And what needs to come up?
And because he was there, I'm very sure that Barrier did not have agents everywhere across the country.
So the whole issue here is this. If you are going to discredit the process or the outcome, you must have something to support you, to say, here are my forms, what you announce is not what.
From the 34,000 polling stations.
What took place at that polling station. So maybe he can rely on the process, raise issues on the process, and those issues are there on the process, leading to the elections. In the last 4 months, a lot has happened. And a good lawyer like Justice Ogora will tell you, there is a lot you can look at and say, this one did not make the process free and fair. But when it comes to the outcome, they really don't have much.
You were making a point of that?
I think this, the way he manages the post-announcement or declaration stage will determine and demonstrate the leadership credentials and capabilities he has. Because with this kind of performance he's pulled up, it is credible. It is a very good level of performance for a first-timer. Actually, he's done so well, beyond even expectations in my view. And if he's got very good handlers around him, they should be able to advise him to manage this process and demonstrate leadership, own up, and be able to go on the drawing board, just like NRM is destined to win, but still we will go on the drawing board to be able to assess the performance in Central Region and look at how we can rectify whatever omissions or commissions that may have led to that. Likewise, he should be able to appreciate the level of performance, even be able to thank his team for pulling off such performance, then use it to mobilize for better performance and organize members of parliament. Anything to the contrary will also conflict with the members of parliament who feel victorious. And if you bring any narrative that negates their victory, you are contradicting them and you are negating their leadership role. And it could be counterproductive within the party itself when you don't acknowledge and recognize the fact that the party has been able to do a good job at parliamentary level, which also reflects, because where he won members of parliament, in most cases is where he won as a presidential candidate. Now that correlation speaks volumes in terms of the credibility and the legitimacy of the outcomes, even of his own members.
And I think, yes,
I would like him to do
it's good comparison.
I would like to see him move very fast to bring the rest of the opposition under his umbrella. You know, he has an umbrella. He should bring it under the umbrella, like ANT. He should negotiate with Mugisha Muntu, Winnie Kiza. They just join him.
They join the umbrella.
Yeah, they join him. They have an agreement.
And what happens
so that by 2024?
Are you talking about an alliance of sorts?
No. The opposition cabinet is going to be formed. So you need to ensure that all these other parties.
But you have one from ANT.
He has
one is a member of IPOD.
Yes, one is member of IPOD.
One ANT cannot grow. No, ANT cannot grow. Mugisha Muti is very strategic. Winnie Kiza, I know she's a very strategic politician. She should come and be with Bobby Wine. And if she comes, she's even likely to go to Iyara. As like under that arrangement that by 2024, when people are out to cross, 1 year before the next elections, this one, whatever, MP
the one who
becomes the other no. And the ANT just disappears from the face. Because ANT
as if you just hate ANT, right?
No. ANT is
basically the narrative of Professor is that Honorable Chagulanyi and his team should be looking at constructive engagement in managing the post-electoral period with a view of stabilizing and growing.
We are actually going to talk about that, but you see, I also feel something different for the opposition, that whenever they come, they actually actually fish from the same opposition. Now they keep preaching to the already converted. Nobody targets getting from the NRM. Now you have about 300 plus for the NRM, and their numbers keep remaining the same or constant or even increasing whenever it comes to parliament.
You know, somebody today saying, I heard somebody on radio saying opposition MPs have gone up. Like now they were talking about NUP with 50.
It is the
50 something.
The first time they are going to be over 100.
Yes,
they've
with
never
50
gone
something,
100.
55.
They've always been.
And then they added
100.
the FDC about 30
Combined.
and so on. But what's going to be the 11th parliament? It has gone up to 500.
Even the numbers have also gone up.
Yes, so you need to look at it from a percentage point of view.
You look exactly, because even the numbers of slots have also increased.
If you look at their percentage in the current parliament, and then their percentage in the next parliament, they have not increased it. They have gone down.
For example, now that these the special interest group positions, look at the elders. For example, two NRM I think have gone in unopposed. Then you have the workers, and I'm sure that the youth actually and stuff like that. Now
they have not gained.
It also just baffles that the opposition comes and gets from the same opposition. Now, when you have honorable better numbers,
they
come
just
back to
change seats.
Exactly.
They don't recruit.
You
They
see,
just change seats.
when you talk of opposition, you have to look at the candidate. Candidate Kizza Besigye, we don't want to always talk about these politics based on regions, but Kizza Besigye was from the West. So he could appeal to some people from the West, like as a homeboy. The way Bob Wine,
just like Lukongiri was his. You could tell.
Yes, that was in there. But now, when you talk about opposition growing, Bob Wine is now from here. I can assure you, just like Obote could not gain support in Central Region, it's going to take him time to really now destroy NRM from Northern Uganda. They have taken it. It's going to take him time. Actually, he may not even succeed. Western entering it is going to be so hard. So the issue is going to remain when NRM has still strongholds within Uganda among the rural people. Eastern, it becomes hard for him to penetrate across the country. He will have a few areas, a few spots in towns here and there, but he cannot.
Okay.
And they had a problem of de-Bugandanization of their party because there was that perception that was created that they are coalescing around here. So that allowed other parts of the country to coalesce against that.
Against the de-Bugandanization.
Yes.
That you talk about.
Now they have also taken the position of DP at the Catholic Party.
You find young people
Exactly.
mobilizing for different reasons. Young people here mobilizing for change, and young people outside the rest of Buganda mobilizing for securing a future. And that
it was amazing that you could see the young people in northern Uganda, the young people in western Uganda saying, no, our future must be secured. Now the young people here are saying, no, it is a new Uganda. And you could tell that now. These are two conflicting worlds of the same young person.
The action created a reaction outside the entire
message was not,
country.
you know, with social media, people get messages from across the areas. Like if Bob Wine goes to Karamoja and focuses on the local issue, so you people of Karamoja, do you know why you are like this? It's because your gold, your whatever is being taken. You got Hoima, you say it's because your oil is being taken. They are getting all those messages. You come to the West, you only go to Kisoro and talk about General Kare Kihura and so on. So they are watching. You know, people they get the messages that you know you are using these messages, regional messages that are appealing to certain people, but they may not work across board. So somebody in Northern Uganda say, well, at least after that Kony War and so on, I've had peace. A lot of things are taking shape. There are some resources. We are rebuilding ourselves. Education is getting up there. Business, you go to Guru Town these days. It's really so they say no. Let's continue with what we know. The devil, you know, is better than the angel.
How do you think Bobby Wine is actually going to manage? Jabulani is going to manage the post period now, where you do not have the Sentamus, the Sentam family in Parliament. Now Eddie Away didn't come through. Chairman Nyanzi didn't come through. Now you have Bobby Wine also out of Parliament.
Chairman Nyanzi was close. The difference, if you look at it, was very close.
You see, being close and being there, there's no half a goal in football. There's no half a goal. Even when it just drops there, by VAR, they will still count it and say...
Being at the gate of UBC,
it's not the same as being in studios.
In UBC.
You know,
it's a even discussion, yes.
For me, he has two tests. He contested as a presidential candidate. Now he has gotten people in parliament. And when you're a president, it's not about the presidency, it's about what happens elsewhere. We are yet to see whether what he has done in Uganda at the presidency getting these votes, what he has done at parliamentary getting all those votes, he can now replicate it in the local council elections that are coming on 20th. If you don't see it, then FDC has a chance of reemerging. If FDC can, for example, go and hold a press conference, they say, we have retained Kampala, we have a road mayor. You get me? And they do that. And one person comes up and says, I've defeated President Museveni, I've defeated Bobby Wine. You know? Then you know, Noop is not at its time.
Okay.
That if this can actually come back and even take what Noop has at the moment.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, the discussion is still carrying on, and there are lots of things here to talk about. Number one, I want you to address me on the foreign influence that we've always talked about, and foreign handling, of course. Now, where so many people think the credibility of an electoral process is supposed to actually be ascertained by foreigners. Now you'll hear this, because the other day you'll hear that the observers, European Union, African Union, all these discredited the process. Now we also want to know what gives credibility to the process. If the Westerners or the foreigners say anything, is that what we should go by? Now these are issues that we'll get into, but we just take a break to just let you know it is at 2 o'clock, and we are now counting down. We've just got 1 hour, and in 1 hour from now, you know, it's just like when we're counting 1 hour to midnight when we are crossing over into another year. We say we're crossing over to the new year, so we keep counting. And so we're counting 1 hour, and in just 1 hour we shall know whether it is securing the future or it is a new Uganda. Of course, for rebuilding a new Uganda, for Chisoboka and all these others, those are not a reality as of now. In 1 hour, what do we expect? We'll take a break and return thereafter.
But you know something?
Double data. Airtel introduces double data. The biggest deal ever on smartphones in Uganda. Buy a smartphone, 3G or 4G, and get 100% data bonus from Airtel. Airtel is giving you 100% bonus data on all weekly and monthly bundles for every new smartphone connected to Airtel for the first 3 months. Dial *175*9# to enjoy double data. Double data, double data. Oh, binovie biruma bayaye. Airtel, the smartphone network, regulated by Uganda Communications Commission.
Leaders who care create a good learning environment.
Because a good school equals a better life.
Raising voices.
Shopping needs, come to Capital Shoppers. We have a variety of items like foods, garments, cosmetics, and all sorts of drinks. Enjoy your shopping experience at affordable prices in our fully stocked branches in the following areas: Ntinda Strater Road, opposite Makere Business School along Portbell Road, Duster Street opposite Nakasero Market, and Garden City on Yusuf Lule Road. To all our customers and suppliers, we thank you for your continuous support. Stay safe, wash your hands, sanitize, and wear your mask always.
Oli mukyala mulwanirizi w'eddembe, munnamawulire, munnamateeka omutendeke, muvubuka oba omuntu yenna aliko obulemu, kyokka nga mulwanirizi wa ddembe, wabulanga naye atyobolebwa oba okutulugunyizibwa ng'ataakiriza abalala. Oba olina omulwanirizi w'eddembe atyobolebwa oba okutulugunyizibwa gw'omanyi, tuukirira aba National Coalition of Human Rights Defenders Uganda ku nnamba etali yakusasulira noti 8 noti noti 1 noti noti 25 noti ne noti 778 576 852.
Yes! Enjoy great value from Airtel with the all-new My Pakalast combo offers. We have customized especially for you the best deals on minutes, data, and SMS with our 3-in-1 My Pakalast combo to give you the best value as you stay in touch with friends and family. To activate My Pakalast voice combo, dial *100*2*1# to get started.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
Elections in Uganda have always been a heightened season for all Ugandans to choose leaders to represent their views in Parliament. This has been the case for over 30 years until last year, where everything changed. There was a new candidate, known for competition, but one who disrupted normalcy, brought the world to a screeching halt. Everything changed with COVID-19, including how elections were going to be conducted in the new normal. With the nature of the elections today, we invited some of the stakeholders to speak to us about their role, reminisce on the old golden days before COVID-19 changed the arena of politics, the factors at play in today's politics, as well as their predictions come the 14th of January 2021.
Of course, for the polling day, you wake up as early as you can, and you have to begin with hopping from polling station to polling station. Of course, you have to witness the opening of the polls at a given polling station, one where you're able to close the polls. So the polling station where you go first and witness the opening should be the same station where you come back in the evening to witness the closure. And there's a reason to that. That you have to compare whether what you captured in the morning at the opening tallies with what is being announced at the closure of the polls at that particular polling station.
Crispin Kahero, a political analyst and election observer for the past 20 years, called upon our election stakeholders to play their roles following the fundamentals of an election.
Look for the good practices, look for the challenges, document, make recommendations, follow through those recommendations to address the challenges of the electoral system. All institutions outside government that work on elections should feed into the work of the Electoral Commission. Likewise, the Electoral Commission should be open to building partnerships, collaborations, constructive working together with other institutions and individuals. That's what Ugandans would want to see in order to restore their trust in the Electoral Commission.
He also intimated that the election in 2021 is quite unique because of COVID-19, a pandemic that toppled the original way of holding elections to what works and protects Ugandans.
By the time COVID came down, we were already more than halfway the electoral roadmap. So, of course, there could have been worries about postponing, because the option of postponing the election should have actually occurred within the legal framework. And there were complications with that, because there are certain legal procedures that have to be met in order for the election to be postponed. If you consider the other option of going ahead for the election, it was the quicker one, it was the easier one. If you look at the countries that have had elections amidst COVID, they haven't had it easy. Take, for example, a country like Malawi. As soon as the election was done, the rates of infections shot up.
On the COVID-19 pandemic being weaponized, Kahero agrees that the state had played a huge role in the favor of the health of Ugandans. He also appreciates the Electoral Commission for ensuring that the election takes place. Being a scientific quote-unquote election, for him digital campaigns were the most suitable way for candidates to reach their electorates.
It would have been an important step for politicians to embrace digital platforms. But we are well aware of the challenges that have fraught this country with respect to accessing media space.
On voter education, Kahero argues that this is not entirely the work of the Electoral Commission, but also a role of Ugandans, civil society organizations, and the political parties.
The role of voter education is not just for the Electoral Commission and civil society organizations. It stretches further to involve political parties. Yes. If you look at a country like Ghana, political parties play a very important role in providing voter education. What happens is there is an institution in Ghana called the National Council for Civic Education. Comes up with messages, hands them over to different stakeholders. The different stakeholders run with them. Among those are political parties. They take these messages and run with them, push them out to their members, supporters, followers, and so you find the same voter education message is being re-echoed by the civil society, by the political parties, by the Electoral Commission itself, by government agencies, by the voters themselves, by the media, which is also supposed to play a very important role. So it's not a one-man, one-woman show.
Overall, Crispin Kaheru advises the public to exercise their civic right and civic duty during the election process. Elections in Uganda have always been a heightened season for all Ugandans to choose leaders to represent their views in Parliament. This has been the case for over 30 years until last year, where everything changed. There was a new candidate, known for competition, but one who disrupted normalcy, brought the world to a screeching halt. Everything changed with COVID-19, including how elections were going to be conducted in the new normal. With the nature of the elections today, we invited some of the stakeholders to speak to us about their role, reminisce on the old golden days before COVID-19 changed the arena of politics, the factors at play in today's politics, as well as their predictions come the 14th of January 2021. As a senior citizen of Uganda, one that has seen many great and worst days stemming from the dictatorship of some leaders until President Yoweri Museveni in the 1980s, John Nagenda can only praise President Museveni for the peace he has brought to Ugandans. He adds that Uganda cannot have any leader like him.
Because, number one, when we came to power, we promised to be very good to our people and to keep them informed, and we promised that we would have elections every 5 years, which we have done. So our elections are a good thing, and one day somebody will come up who will win other than our leader, probably, and so I'm well content. And I'll be going down there and voting. I've voted every time.
John Nagenda, who is a senior presidential advisor, appreciates the fact that their opponents to President Museveni, but the continuous landslide wins every 5 years is proof that people love him. Nagenda is always excited about elections and believes President Museveni has been a great leader, very hardworking, and is highly loved by Ugandans. At some point in life, Nagenda felt that President Museveni should leave power, something he regrets because he came to a realization that no one could beat him at his leadership.
Actually, this time we've been poorer than usual about the people who are standing for this job. Because apart from Bobi Wine, then you'll have my friend Mao, who won't win, and I've told him, and Amriat. Amriat is a very interesting person because I always see him fighting the police. The others, I must say, I haven't found them very impressive. Let us say there's a little boy of 24, okay? Katumba. Oh dear. And even then he's better than some of the other people who are older, I would say. For their own sakes, I would seriously warn them against misbehaving.
Nagenda, however, admires the enthusiasm of National Unity Platform President and presidential candidate Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu, who he thinks might be second runner-up. However, Nagenda still struggles with differentiating or understanding most of the presidential candidates. For example, Mr. Wainaki calls him. Nagenda says he had never heard of him nor his music. When asked about journalists and their role in the elections, Mr. Nagenda argues that the day hasn't yet come when the older generation is still in power. Nagenda is so excited about the elections and ready to celebrate President Museveni's victory with so many other Ugandans.
Well, it's UBC Yogi Polls 2021 here at the Elections Hub at UBC. My name is Jagan Soka. Welcome back from that short break. Now, as we continue counting the clock downwards, we just talk about less than 45 minutes. And in just those minutes, Justice Byabakama Mjenye will be reading to us the winner for this year's elections. And we are just waiting. At 3 o'clock, that's a promise that we'll get the final and the last declaration of who the winner is. Carrying on with the discussion, continuing in studios here, with me is Honorable Mike Sebalu from the National Resistance Movement Party, and Professor Venantius Bariamreba. He was there before, and he knows what this time actually means. He's been there. On a day like this, he actually knows quite a number of things. The rest of us are commentators about the processes, but he was there, and of course he talks about the things. Let's talk about foreign influence. We had talked about that. Their observer role, and the credibility of the elections, where they are not and where they are.
I mean, it's good to have observers. But if you look at our Ugandan constitution, which is the supreme law, it does not say that if elections do not have
observers,
then they are not free and fair. Or if observers say they are not free and fair, the elections are not going to stand the test of time. Recently in Tanzania, you know what happened? Even those who wanted to come as observers, the president kept them away.
In Burundi, the president kept them away.
The country has moved on. But having said that, it's always important to have observers. To have other people who can tell you where things have gone right, where things have gone wrong, you know, so that you can improve. It's about continuous improvement. It's like quality assurance. You want to improve on the process. So observers are important. You also know that Uganda, our budget, a big portion of our budget is funded by the foreign governments. That send observers. So they also want to know that are the democratic processes, you know, on steady progress. Is our money being used well and so on. Even part of the money is used on conducting these elections. So in a way, it is important that we strike a balance. A balance in such a way that the observers come in, they do their part, and yeah, I think I'll add on from there.
Okay, well that's important. Ndugu Honorable Sebalu.
Yeah, I think we need to appreciate the whole notion of election observation. The electoral process is guided by the electoral laws of the country as managed by the election management body of that country. And the process of judging how well the electoral process has been undertaken is measured against the compliance with the law of the land where elections are being held. And in that regard, it is important to appreciate that being invited to observe elections in a given country is a courtesy extended to you by the host nation, and there are responsibilities and obligations on your part in order to conform to the procedures. That's why it is subjected to the process of accreditation, and so that you are able to perform your roles. And as you perform the roles, you need to observe and respect the laws, the procedures, and the processes of the host nation where elections are being conducted. And that is something that all electoral observer missions do conform to. To the extent that even where you see an omission or a commission, your role is to raise it with the competent authorities so that you are able to balance between observation and interference. Because you may take action or make statements that border to interference. And it is good courtesy and decorum on your part to come out good on that. So that conduct in terms of the statements, that's why there are long-term missions, there are also short-term missions, and there are procedures of communicating your outcome and those are recommendations to the election management body, so that in subsequent elections, maybe those recommendations are taken into account to fill the gaps that may have been noticed in the process of undertaking the observation.
Professor Baria, if the observers...
What I can add to that one, if you ask me that question, you know, if you go to America, you go to Europe or Western world, the thing of observers, you know that you're conducting elections in the UK and they're observers and they have to give a report and so on. The perception in Africa is that in Africa we don't conduct free and fair elections. That's the perception. That at times the incumbents don't want to leave power. So these observers come to see, are things being done properly, you know, like as observers. And actually, even if they are observers, we know an observer is an observer. But when they issue those reports, they have an impact, especially when it comes to fund that comes from them and all that stuff. So it is okay, in most cases, to look at what they have put as the recommendations and so on, and it's our best to implement some of them. But
and you know the beauty with the recommendations is that the person, the recommendations to whom you are making the recommendation, it's like advice. You may give me advice, I'm at liberty
to accept it or not to take it.
Or not to take it, or to take it with modification and adjustments depending on...
Post-independent Africa, now we talk about 60+ years. Post-independent Africa was riddled by wars and guns predominantly. Now those have been overtaken and substituted by elections and votes. Are we doing the right things? Are the elections and votes helping us, or it also still gives us lots of challenges, Professor Baria?
You know, it depends on what you want to achieve. It is okay to have regular, free and fair elections, but also I think if now, like, I had the powers to do it in Uganda, I'd have moved away from this 5-year term to something like 7 or 8 years, because we spend a lot of money on elections. There is a lot that goes on.
The other day, when
people are not in office,
when the president was addressing the nation, he actually said we've spent about $1 trillion shillings in this electoral process.
Yes.
$1 trillion shillings.
Yes. And at times you end up with the same result. But it's okay for people it's okay for people to participate. But the cost of participation, you know, when you look at like the ministers, the members of parliament, like now, they've spent a lot of money on the campaigns. They're going to use the first year trying to pay pay for the loans and so on. But again, in the last 3 years towards the elections, they are going to be in the constituencies looking for votes, instead of doing what they are supposed to be doing. So in a way, this time of 5 years is not long enough for us to really conduct another election and another one, and it's continues becoming expensive. Now, like, you look at the parliamentary seats, over 500. Actually, elective positions are over 2 million. You know,
about 2.2 million.
Yes. So for me, this is democracy. It's a good thing that people are feeling that they are participating in these processes. But what is it? What is that cost to the economy? And I think we need to make sure that as a country we review this thing of these regular elections. Should they be 5 years? Should they be 6? Should they be 7? So that we don't really do things that are anti-development.
Okay. What do you think now explains President Museveni's win in northern Uganda? For example, I'd picked your mind here before and want to just recall it. In 1996, President Museveni against Dr. Semogerere, you notice that Dr. Semogerere won that wing. In 2001, Kizza Besigye did the same thing. In 2006, Kizza Besigye did it. In 2011, Mao comes on for the first time in Yakwele wins in that area. In 2015-16, Mao presents a candidate called Amama Mbabazi, and this time they refused to actually honor Mao's candidate, and they went back to Dr. Kizza Besigye. President Museveni comes, and for the first time, he's winning an election in northern Uganda, in Acholi sub-region and Lango. What explains this? What have you done right in Acholi that you've not done right in Buganda? I'm now talking to you, Honorable Sebaru.
No, I think what we need to appreciate about the northern question is that there was a political question that had to be resolved, getting people to appreciate national integration, responding to the security dividend. You know, that region was under insurgency for a very long period of time, which denied it development access, which also excluded it from the monetary economy. Now that we've been able to fix the economic question in that area, been able to fix the security question, that comes with it with dividends. So the security dividend and the economic dividend. So right now, the northern region is part of the Ugandan economy in terms of production, in terms of proceeds of economic activity. And you'll appreciate that there is a lot of interventions that have been made in that area, in the area of service delivery. A lot has been done to ensure that the area feels part. So they are now feeling a sense of accommodation. They are feeling a sense of belonging. Hitherto, the politics there that was being preached was politics of exclusion. You know, we are not part of Uganda. Government is excluding us. Government is not caring for us. But government went full force, created a ministry, a coordinated effort under the Prime Minister's office, and a lot has been done in terms of social service, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of the human resource. So this time round, definitely there is that sense of belonging. But that also coupled with the kind of challenger that President Museveni is facing, it also resonates with the Buganda question, the NAP center of gravity. It also resonates with the other actors. So when you look around the candidates that have come along, I don't think that the people of northern region saw an alternative. And given the performance of President Museveni in the last, and more so in the last 5 years, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of opening up the economy, and the peace, and the peace dividend, which allowed people to engage in productive processes and enhance their domestic income and their welfare. When you go to Gulu, it is almost an international economy. A lot of NGOs doing lots of work there, and lots of
well, hold it here. Professor Baria and you, Honorable Sebalo, I'll come back to you to talk about the next parliament that we've seen take shape. Now, when we return, we'll be joined by Waswarule, who was in that 6th parliament, I think, which was championed by the late Wapakabulo and the late Francis Ayume. He'll talk to us, and we also need to get to the quality of parliament, the debates that we expect to ensue therein, and for the people. Are we electing these people to just give them jobs, to just have them there, to just appease our egos and emotions, or we are actually sending legislators who will be able to do stuff for us? Now, when we return, we will have Waswarule, who was in that house, to also let us feel. I'm only happy that Honorable Sebalo has been there. You've been a presidential candidate. Let's come back to that issue, Professor Baria. After this short break, we'll return.
Fruit juice. Our journey begins in orchards where some of the best fruits are grown. Fruitvale fruit juice is 100% natural with no added sugar, filled with a wholesome goodness of vitamins and minerals that nourish your body and delight your taste buds. Enjoy real fruit juice in orange, tomato, apple, beetroot with mango, lemon mint with cucumber, mango, berry and tropical variants. Grab your Fruitvale 100% fruit juice today. Available in all leading supermarkets.
You may have heard of physical distancing. This means keeping at least 2 arms length apart from other people at all times to reduce the spread of coronavirus. But why is it so important? Without physical distancing, each person infected with coronavirus will infect 2 to 3 others. Each of these people go on to infect 2 to 3 more, who each go on to infect another 2 or 3 people, and so on. Within a month, the infection will spread from 1 to 406 people. But if each person halves the number of people they come into close contact with, the number of infections drops dramatically. Each person would only infect 1 or sometimes 2 people, and each of those infected people would only infect 1 or occasionally 2 more. So the disease spreads much more slowly. In a month, the infection would only spread from 1 to 15 people. That's the power of physical distancing. Keep at least 2 arms length distance from as many people as you can to reduce infections and save lives. That way you protect yourself, the people you love, and your country.
This message is brought to you by the Ministry of Health.
Thank you so much, and welcome back from that short break. We continue with the discussion as we count down to the declaration time, and we are just looking at only 25 minutes, according to the Electoral Commission from the National Tally Center at Chambogo. Professor Baria, just before I bring in Honorable Rem, let me pick your mind on there was something
that moral
itching
issue. You know, when Kanokiza made the announcement that I'm not going to contest, yet he had told people that he's going to remove President Museveni. People felt that everybody had given up now, that actually you cannot defeat President Museveni. And actually after that, he said nobody can defeat President Museveni through the ballot box. So now, people of northern Uganda who have seen President Museveni for the last 30 plus years, and now there is a lot of development there. And they also know that actually, that in this country, President Museveni does not pick cabinet from opposition. And they also know that members of parliament who are in the ruling party, there's a way they can also bring resources to the constituency, to their constituencies. So in a way, I think they have made a smart move to say, let us be on board. Because if you carried out an opinion poll before these elections, presidential, more than 50% of the Uganda will tell you President Museveni is going to win. During this period of the campaign, they will tell you the same thing. Even now, as they are going to announce it, they will tell you the ballot has said it. And even after, they will tell you he's going to win. They even those who even project that in 2026, if he comes back, he'll win. So in a way,
are you one of those?
So in a way, people have said, you know, they say if you can't defeat them, you join them. So I think Northern Uganda has made a strategic move, and they are going to see a lot of developments. And they also have a vibrant chairperson for the whole region, who is now the deputy speaker. The
deputy speaker.
But I don't think he'll defeat Kadaga. Kadaga is going to come back as the speaker. So in a way, they also have their people they are working with.
That is politics for another day.
that is politics for another day. Now we'll discuss that in May. That's politics of May. You're very welcome, Honorable Waswa Lule. Thank you so much for joining us in studios here on UBC TV. We happy you finally made it to studios, and here is where you are today. You've looked at everything as it's played out, and you've been there before. Let's pick your mind on the assessment of the exercise, especially the parliament that has already taken shape. What do you have to say about that?
The parliament I won't make much comment on, because the statistics were coming out. They were not clear, the results. The election is over, it's won. There are those who have question marks. It has been questioned by one of the candidates, so that's the only issue. But otherwise, the actual voting exercise was very smooth, and I think everybody has been satisfied as far as that's concerned. But the build up to it, there are question marks that needs to be resolved.
Talk about your successors. You just look at them now, because yes, they are the ones there. They were voted just like you were voted.
Yes.
What do you expect of the next parliament of Uganda? You were in the 6th parliament, that's so?
Yes, I was.
Yes, you were in the 6th parliament with the Wapaka Bulos, the Francis Ayumes and all the others.
The Ben Watchers, the
Ben Watchers,
the Dick Nyais, the Winnie Nyimas.
Winnie Nyimas and all the others.
Yes. The Omara Tubo.
Omara Tubo.
Yes.
The quality of members of parliament today and the quality of members of parliament of that time, are we going forward, or we just think it's a different crop of people where we just vote for them and the rest is to whom it may concern?
I think one has to be honest that we are not going forward.
We are not going forward?
No. In summary, the quality of debate over the years has declined, and maybe the issues have also faded, but the quality of debate, the quality of representation has not been. And you find now that the turnover, the head count at the end of the election, when we take the head count, we'll find that a very large percentage will not come back. It's unfortunate, but I think that is a consequence of probably the extent of monetization of the electoral process. So that to a certain extent, anyway, the monetization has its negative sides, because whoever has spent a lot needs to get a return on investment.
Do you envisage a situation where we can actually go away from monetization of politics, because that has crept into the system, and that's where we are? Just like we have technology today, we have internet today, we have all the things working with us. I don't envisage a situation where we can go back to the analog days. 2-3 days without internet is causing everybody to quarrel and do all the things, because people were used to having their phones and, you know, doing everything with them. There are people who do not know that there was a time when you had to wait for a call from somewhere to actually get you to give you information. Now, because technology has overtaken us, and that's where we are, we can go back from technology. Do you look at us going away from monetized politics to the politics where the village can actually come and say, we don't have anybody better than Professor Badiamreba. There is nobody in this community better than Waswarure. These are the people that we should send, and there is accountability to the people, to the community, and to the voters. Do you see us getting back there, or it will now be still about money? That if Dagen wants to contest for any position in this country, I need to start now saving for that period?
Well, there are two things that you need to look at.
Three.
One.
Okay.
There are two. The first factor is you look at the source of the money. Is the source of that money likely to dry up the finances? If it's unlikely to dry up, you will still get the same crop of individuals monetizing the economy in the same way. Then, of course, it also raises the question, is when I say where is the money coming from, the level of corruption. That also there's a statistical relationship.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Professor, yes.
Yes, I mean, one of the things I think that I agree with him, we can never take our money from politics. You cannot divorce it from politics. Even in America, when you try to fundraise and you don't have enough funds, you fall off the rest. You cannot continue. Now, in Uganda, if you look at our kind of system, if we are only electing the president or the people who are running for president, and after that, each party decides on the MPs they are going to have, maybe the money will not have been so much in the villages. But every MP has to be voted for, and every one has to be voted for, and so on and so forth. So in a way, as a candidate, you must appeal to the voters. You must take your message there. You need posters. You need to go to a radio station. You need to visit them. You need to have agents on ground campaigning. So there is no way you can take money out of the equation. You need it. The only thing is this one where you are maybe paying people kind of bribes, like you go at night and say have 2,000.
I also want to know how much money changes. Before you come in, Honorable Sebaru, you participated in this election, and being a presidential candidate, for example, when you're a presidential candidate, we had 112 districts. Now you had to go to all the 112 districts. They've increased now to 146. But going to 112 districts, of course, you can't be in every village. At that time, I think we had about 58,000 villages. But I'm only thinking, if you, Professor Baria, had all this money to move around the country in 90 days, would that make a lot of difference? Or are people decided that, like you said, in Western Uganda, if you are not NRM, especially at that level, then you're wasting all your time. If you are in Buganda and possibly you are not this particular party, then you're wasting a lot of time. Would you do anything better, even if you had the money with you?
You see, when you have the money, even those people who came to Jesus, some of them, they didn't know they would become disciples. But in the process, they became disciples. So if you have a good message, I remember when I went to Eastern Uganda, when I went to Northern Uganda, people would tell me, some of them could not mention my name, say, Professor, we love you, you have a good message. We are going to vote for you. And a good number voted for me. But if I had gone there, I would not have gotten those votes. So it is important that you pass on the message. At times the message may not give you votes, but it will continue like lingering in people's mind. This guy had a good message. So it is important that if you come up as a presidential candidate, you reach the people. But the second thing is, if you are going to keep a base in those constituencies, you need money. You cannot be there yourself. You need teams that are going to be there. And those teams must be financed. They must have transport, they must have money for lunch, they must have facilitation basically. So your budget can start from 1 billion, if you're a presidential candidate, even 20 trillion shillings, if you have the money. You need it.
You wanted to say something on the monetization.
Yeah, but I want to put it in focus to parliamentary. And I look at 3 areas of concern that generate the challenge that we find ourselves in. One, corruption or monetization is now something that is a way of life. I think fighting corruption needs to go beyond politics in all sectors of our lives. Because even in church, if you are not rich, the church doesn't recognize you as much, regardless of the source of your wealth.
But even in the campaign,
when it comes,
churches organize meetings and they ask you to come and visit them, and you have to leave something. They say we are roofing, we are plastering. You know, churches.
We are buying chairs. Yes, because I want to give you an example where you find a young man in their 20s, he's just started working. He's built a mansion in the village and he's doing good. But people don't even question the source of the wealth. And when the bishop is coming or a big religious leader is coming, that's where they recommend the lunch to be hosted. No one ever questions that this young man of 20, how did he get money? And in some of the villages, it's even interesting. If there's a young man who has made it too good too fast, that one is sharp. Then if it's one who is doing things the right way and is not earning big, or you are too salary, that
in your days it was cars. If you graduate and don't have a car, there is a problem.
Yeah, so we need to fight it across board. So that is one. But also in politics, when you go to offer yourself, the first question is not the program that you are coming to share with the population. It will be the budget. How much money do you have? If you indicate that your budget is small, then they will tell you that you will be a hard person to sell in the community. So the first question is about the budget, not the ideas, not what you are propagating. That is one. Then the second one is this idea of parliament determining their remuneration. That is something we need to reverse. The idea of parliament sitting and determining their take-home has made it so attractive that it is the highest paying institution. So everyone out there, if you want to lead a good life and be paid well, parliament is the place to go. That's why you find so many people coming up and joining parliament. Now, another thing that determines quality, the size of parliament. This parliament is too big.
It's very big.
It's already big, now it is going to be bigger. Someone talking for 3 minutes, you can never develop competence and quality.
And they don't begin at 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock.
But that issue of parliament we raised
is a big
like
problem.
in this current case, if we put a salary of a member of parliament 1 million, allowances
People
are
run
cut
away.
down, you'll actually get quality people coming to parliament.
Because they
Those
now-
ones who have their money and they want to come
Who are
and
not
contribute to
looking
the
for
debate,
Yeah.
they will come and they'll be called
Those who
honorables.
already have cars. Now,
But
now,
yes, most of them are coming to look for money.
So as long as parliament is looked at as employment and the highest paying, it is going to attract all kind and manner of people to come, not for purposes of improving the debate. And you remember another dimension, the parliament that he belonged to and the parliament I belonged to was qualitative because it was individual merit then. So it was not group dynamics. You would go in that house and Waswarule would sway opinion across the parliament based on the technical knowledge, on the knowledge base, on the capacity.
You both belong to the parliament of individual merit.
Yeah,
Yes.
and it was qualitative. You'd come with a viewpoint, then someone comes up with a debate and he sways the entire house. But now that we have multi-party, once you've agreed in the caucus, whether you agree or not, the best you can do is to keep quiet because you can't contradict the party position.
Okay.
But in that house, someone would come and sway opinion on the strength of the knowledge base, the competencies, and the packaging of the message. So now you find very knowledgeable people. Once you don't agree with the party position, then the best you can do is to keep quiet, not to
But on the
contradict.
point of debate, I listened to a lady, I don't want to mention her name. She's one of those who won in Masaka. She spoke so well in Uganda. I said, she was saying, I'm going to fight for the issues in Masaka. And I was so impressed. I won't even mention the party. But then when it came to the English news, they could not express herself. So maybe we need to move away from this thing of having English. We go to Uganda, we go maybe to Ruo, to Nyankore, and we have interpreters. People will debate so well in their language.
Translation is the most expensive in international meetings.
Exactly.
You can't afford it.
It will be very expensive.
And it won't be as vibrant.
And the read was so good in Uganda.
Even the vibrancy.
But she was so good in Uganda, she couldn't express
herself.
herself.
An interpreter does not connect direct. You find some people laughing 5 minutes later through the translation. That's when the message has sunk. So it is not spontaneous, it doesn't connect well, and it is very expensive.
Honorable Waswa.
Yes, you see, what has come out from this discussion is one, that corruption is a culture.
It's a culture?
Yes.
Eventually.
It is now a culture that is here
We
to
have
stay.
to fight it as a society.
And as Honorable Sebalu said, we have to fight it. The question should be not whether we need to fight it, is why we have lost the war to the extent that it has become a culture. I think that is the issue. Why has it become a culture? Now, coupled with the question of monetization of politics and the corruption being a culture.
Okay.
There is now in the political arena the question of poverty. We are dealing with an issue that is going to overturn this nation in the not too far future. Poverty is something that you cannot fight.
Well, that's very important. And when you talk about corruption, Honorable Waswalude, I think I also remember that you are one of the first IGGs that we had in this country, especially during this regime of President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni.
Yes.
And then as the IGG, of course, the times were different. So many things were happening at the time.
Yeah.
And we could even actually just look at that, because when you listen to all these candidates, one message that was maybe consistent to all of them was a fight against corruption. Unless you could hear all of them come out to say that. Now, according to Patrick Oboy, he calls it state capture. According to Bobby Wine, he also calls it a different thing. Kabuleta used to call President Museveni and his cronies, take everything and then, denying all of us to. So that has actually been a consistent message. But I'm only just trying to look into the National Talent Center to see what is happening there, and I can see the activities happening there. And then very shortly we will go, because remember we're counting down and it's just 5 minutes to it's actually 8 minutes to 3 o'clock. And so we're trying to peep into the National Tally Center. 8 minutes to the hour, and this is one of those defining moments when you are going for World Cup and you've waited for World Cup for all this while. 4 years later, you start looking and seeing, and well, now that's exactly what is happening. You can see everybody is now taking their seats, and of course waiting to hear the announcement. Professor Bariamureba will help us understand what that moment means, especially when you are not there as a candidate. What is expected there? Because at this time, you can tell I am not winning. For example, Katumba Oye knows he's not winning, Nansen knows she's not winning, Mayambala knows he's not winning, Amriat knows he's not winning, Kakurugu knows he's not winning. What is in your mind at that time? And because I know you are not there.
But you see the way it's done in Uganda, at the end of the day, everybody knows who's going to be announced as winner. If you said maybe round one, you say we have announced 30% of the votes cast. Then the next time you are giving the final outcome, people will not know. Like now we know that if you get Amriat, you get Mugisha, all those candidates outside Bobby Wine, combined. If you combine their votes, they won't even reach 10%.
They are less than
so they cannot even cause a rerun. So when there is a clear lead between
the first and the second,
and the first one is way above 50, then everybody is like, they know what's going to be announced. But if it was abrupt, you know, you'd be under pressure. So these guys are not under pressure.
Actually, that is a time of reflection.
Yes.
What could I have done better? Where did I go wrong? Well, you know, you are simply
actually it's not necessarily clear what's going to come out, for the simple reason that the information we've been given is not detailed enough. We're not given an indication of the distribution of the vote, where it's coming from. Because when you're in the political field, you can know where the strongholds are. Now, some of the results that have been delayed in being announced, and it's not clear whether they're
less than 8%.
No, it's not clear whether they're included in the presidential vote or not. Is Kampala?
Kampala was announced.
It was announced, but I'm saying we need to know what is in the presidential result. Does it include Kampala, Wakiso, Mpigi, Mukono, Masaka, for example, or does it not? Because some of these places were delayed.
You know, at the last announcement, they provided the list.
Remember, they provided the list, and
Kampala was there. Wakiso,
I think that was the 8th announcement.
Might have been on another television station.
Yes,
they
broke it down
per district.
They broke it down per district and said this Gulu City, Jinja City, they actually announced.
They sampled.
No, what they did is at the Tally Center.
I'm saying, I saw that broadcast. They gave you a sample, they gave you Kampala, they gave you Jinja, but greater Jinja, not even Jinja City. They gave you Gulu.
As a mathematician, what I can say, if you are left with 80% of the total votes, they cannot come from more than 5 districts. You get it? If you say the whole district votes that you are counting, they can't come from more than 5 districts.
So hold it there. Just looking into the National Tally Center there, its decision moment. And we can now see Justice Byabakama and the commissioners of the Electoral Commission moving on. Okay, Byabakama is not yet there, but I'm told the commissioners actually are moving in from a distance. I can see this happening there. The observers, the other stakeholders who are invited to be there at the National Tally Center. And just what happens is in the next few minutes, we just look at all the 3 minutes when the Electoral Commission will be reading to us these results. Last elections, I was with you, Ndugu Sebalu, at Nambole. At Nambole, where we were. And you received the results, you and the Secretary General.
I was the official representative.
You were the official representative of your candidate.
What's happening this time?
Help Honorable Waswa Lule. What do you do there, especially as a representative of your candidate?
Yeah, as a representative, you follow the trends and take
Are you allowed to look at those things that he's actually saying, to know where the results are coming from, or you just leave it to everybody there?
No, that time they had a screen that would update, they would announce, but then you'd keep getting updates on the screen, and basically you are there to confirm what is, so you are there to confirm what is coming in and what is being officially announced. So you are formally representing the principal, who is the candidate, in confirming what is relayed there, and officially after the announcement they officially make the handover.
Do you project that after the announcement, Honorable Osorole, do you think that after the announcement any of these other 10 candidates will choose to go to court? Do you see that happening, or you think they will concede defeat, whether honorably or dishonorably?
Well, one candidate has already come out to say that they don't accept the result. It's unfortunate.
Which is okay?
It's okay, but it's unfortunate that it was done at an early stage.
At an early stage?
Yes, before
the announcement.
I think the results had come out about 17%. If it was me, I would have waited until later. But of course, the grounds are not necessarily, as you say, we have what happened on the voting day, there's what happened before the voting day. They might have concluded that the quality of the campaign and the build-up may have been to such an extent that it affected their campaign materially.
But if somebody... Yes, but you see, when you talk about like the 8% that was still left, even if it was given to one candidate, and that candidate is not President Museveni, Museveni will still be above the 50% plus one vote. So in a way, at that time, we knew that
the point Waswa is raising, Honorable Waswa, is that came too early in the day.
That one was too early.
And the idea was to change the narrative. So that could have been an outcome of handlers or ego or something, because the trend was emerging and the narrative had to be created. But when you look, there was no support, but in terms of evidence, in terms of the motive. So someone wanted to discredit the exercise early in the day, so that some people would even lose interest following it up to the end. Others would create other perceptions around the process.
But that's what happened in America.
All other candidates are yet to comment about it, which I think is a decent way of managing a process of that.
You know, Trump in America said the elections were rigged in Georgia. You know, the train to Georgia. They were rigged. And at the end of the day, people said, but if they are rigged, why should we go back and vote? The Republicans, and then they lost the 2 Senate seats.
Did you see anybody go to court, Professor Baria?
Where? This one. I can tell you, even as we speak now, or even before voting, people had started writing what they are going to submit to court. So that one will be sure there will be at least one petition going. They are going, but one thing you should know, so the outcome. If there are 9 justices, at least 5 are going to say the election was okay and proceed. And so we are not going to have a rerun, but they are going to.
How do you count those 5?
Like I told you before, there is a culture that is emerging in Ugandan politics, even at parliamentary level. There are people who go into the electoral process already with a clear way of explaining their loss should it emerge. And they normally don't want to attribute it to their own weaknesses. It is either the weaknesses of the organizing the electoral management body, or the candidate has done X, Y, and Z. So they always manage their loss using other people to explain the loss. So it wouldn't be of any surprise at all that one goes to court as a way of managing the loss. It is part of managing the loss. It is attributed to bad organization, not my weakness as a candidate. So that culture is taking root, although it is not democratic, because democracy remains good when you are the victor. It also remains a good practice when you are the loser.
Honorable Lule, you'll notice that there are places where the Honorable Kyagulanyi Ssentamu actually beat President Museveni at both President and Parliament. And the places where Honorable Kyagulanyi did not even field a candidate, where he had nobody, there was no representation, there was no agent, there was no all these people. If he decided to go to court to dispute the election, just like he was actually saying, now, does he also dispute places where, do you think, would you put sense to the dispute if he actually said, I dispute the results of Yibanda, where he didn't win and where he didn't have a member of parliament, and he says, I think the one in Wakiso in Kampala, where I actually won, credible results. Would that be a good and fair, sensible argument for anybody?
If I'm trying to speculate as to the line of attack of Honorable Kyagulanyi as to this the election, it would be in the build-up to the election. The actual election, the election day.
It should be pre the elections themselves.
No, the election process starts from even before you are nominated.
Yeah.
So you're looking at the process from that time, right? Now there are questions as to the ability to conduct a campaign, the restrictions to conducting the campaign, who takes responsibility. For example, I remember seeing on television when they were going to Kalangala to conduct a campaign, and they were apprehended by men in military uniform. Now, who gave the order for these people to be apprehended and to be taken elsewhere? All these questions are important questions in the electoral process. Was it Biabakama, right? And if it is Biabakama, then there are certain questions you'll ask. If Biabakama is not the one who was the one who had the authority to give orders to the men in military uniform, that is even a more serious question mark, because traditionally they take their orders from one of the candidates. So the setup itself can be questioned. That the setup did not allow for a free and fair election, and it could have affected the actual result. So there are question marks, even the question of, because there have been questions of discrimination, that the law has been applied or the procedures have been applied to some candidates and not to another.
Okay.
You see?
And I think on the same one, before Professor Badia comes on here, is you know that when we went into this election, it was unique in a way that we're organizing an election in the midst of a pandemic.
Precisely.
And on nomination day, for example, the tradition has been that these exercises have been done at Nambole Mandela National Stadium. Now, this time round, Mandela National Stadium was actually gazetted as a non-traditional isolation facility for the Ministry of Health.
Yes.
For which you all know very well. Now, they improvised and went to gazette another place, which is Chambogo. But you notice that on nomination day, the Electoral Commission was very clear. When you're coming for nomination, come with a COVID certificate, come with only 10 people, I think that's all they requested for.
Yes.
Come with 10 people, and of these you have your nominator, your seconder, which has not been the tradition.